Mid to high teens locally, up to around about 21 degrees across southeast England. Into the evening time, thunderstorms will slowly fade away. We'll still see further spells of rain across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England as we head into the early hours. And then the next few days, it does remain unsettled. Further showers on Monday, further spells of rain Tuesday and into Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking?
Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me.
This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Now, coming up on the show, on Wednesday, Rishi Sunak called a general election for the 4th of July. 78 Tory MPs are now leaving Parliament, a post-war record-breaking exodus, with Michael Gove and Andrew Leadsom becoming the latest MPs to announce that they will not stand. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'll be asking, was Rishi right to call an election now? The Conservative MP for South Thanet, Craig McKinley, I don't know whether you watched that incredible documentary on GB News. He returned to Parliament for the first time this week since his battle with sepsis, which left him without any hands or feet. We'll be discussing the impact and science behind this life-threatening condition in this week's Hot Topic. Then, my difficult conversation is with son of the famous photographer David Bailey, Sasha Bailey, a former model who has the NHS waiting list to thank for giving him time to think, stopping him from going down a path of gender reassignment surgery. He says he's happy to be alive. You will not want to miss that story. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Cameron Walker.
Nana, thank you. It is 3:01. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. Now, we've got some breaking news in the last few minutes. An aircraft has crashed into a field near Coningsby in Lincolnshire. Police and emergency services were rushed to the scene just before 1:20 this afternoon. It's believed to be a single-occupant aircraft and nobody else is thought to have been involved. But roads do remain closed. They are in place in areas of Dog Dyke Road and Sandy Bank. Motorists are being urged to avoid the area. Well, to other news now. Sir Keir Starmer says the voting age should be lowered to include 16 and 17-year-olds. It comes as both major parties pitch their message to voters on the first weekend of the election campaign, with the government focusing on economic growth. The Labour leader says if you can work, you deserve to have a say in democracy. Now, 78 Conservative MPs have now stepped down ahead of the summer election, which is a post-war record. It also surpasses the previous high, which took place prior to Tony Blair's victory for Labour in 1997. It comes as the Tories trail in the polls, with all parties continuing their election campaigning today. Liberal Democrats leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is ready to see a new parliament.
The Liberal Democrats have got a fantastic set of policies on the health service, on the economy and the environment. Today we're campaigning against the sewage problem, and we've led that campaign. I think overall we're just much more ambitious than some of the other parties, and critically we want to transform British politics. We think the politics in our country is broken, it needs to be changed, and we're the only party talking about that.
A 17-year-old boy from Lancashire has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a woman was found dead on a beach in Bournemouth last night. Dorset police said they were called to reports of 2 women stabbed on Durley Chine Beach at around 11:45 in the evening. A 34-year-old woman was pronounced dead at the scene, while a 38-year-old was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Now, there are still waits of around 2 hours in the port of Dover this afternoon as an estimated 20 million cars hit the road for the bank holiday weekend. The AA is forecasting severe delays, with huge queues seen waiting to cross from Dover into mainland Europe. The port says there's congestion at the French border and they're working closely with Kent Police to put additional traffic management measures in place. Russian President Vladimir Putin is reportedly ready to pause his invasion of Ukraine with a negotiated ceasefire that would recognise current battlefield lines. According to 4 sources who've spoken to the news agency Reuters, the Russian president has grown frustrated by what he sees as Western attempts to derail possible negotiations. Asked about the report during a visit to Belarus yesterday, Putin said talks should resume and negotiations should be based on the reality on the ground. Ukraine's President Zelensky has previously said that peace, according to Putin's terms, is impossible. Now, despite today's sunny skies, thunderstorms, I'm afraid, and possibly hail could be on the way later this evening. A yellow warning has been issued from midday tomorrow, with heavy showers possible across large parts of England and the north of Wales. But the Met Office expects the wet weather to settle into light, patchy showers in time for Bank Holiday Monday. And one of the most popular US presidents is getting the film treatment as the actor Dennis Quaid puts his spin on Ronald Reagan.
What would you say is the issue of our time? No question about it. Communism and the Soviet Union. Get in the game. Run for office.
Yeah, the first trailer for a new film about the 40th president has just been released. It tells the story of President Reagan's life, from confronting childhood bullies to becoming a Hollywood actor and then taking his seat in the Oval Office. The cast also includes Penelope Ann Miller as First Lady Nancy Reagan, Mina Savari as his first wife, actress Jane Wyman, and Leslie Ann Down as Margaret Thatcher. Reagan is due for release in August. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Cameron. Right, it is fast approaching 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. My goodness, it's time to muck the week, and what a busy one it's been. I mean, the week was dominated by the announcement of a general election, with Rishi Sunak talking with the Labour Party anthem in the background.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Well, this is on a par with Theresa May in her conference speech. Remember the one where she lost her voice, the letters fell off and somebody handed her a P45? Well, later, Rishi addressed the Tory rally.
On the 5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. And he has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises that he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, how can you know that he wouldn't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister? We Conservatives have got a clear plan, with bold action, to secure our future. So let's take that message and that vision of a secure future to every corner of our United Kingdom, and let's show Labour that the British people will never be taken for granted.
Labour's Sir Keir Starmer and his lacklustre speech was where he was clearly caught by surprise with the announcement.
Most importantly of all, we do all this with a new spirit of service. Country first, party second. A rejection of the gesture politics you will see in this campaign, I have no doubt, from the Tories and the SNP. I'm well aware of the cynicism people hold towards politicians at the moment. But I came into politics late, having served our country as leader of the Crown Prosecution Service. And I helped the police service in Northern Ireland to gain the consent of all communities. Service of our country is the reason, and the only reason, why I am standing here now asking for your vote.
Well, he looked at me like he couldn't believe his luck. I got a sense of, I can't believe I might actually be in power. I've seen more excited when his football team are playing Arsenal, isn't it? Ed Davey and his Liberal Democrat crew of neither here nor there. Everyone's grinning like Cheshire cats. Favourite word, change.
For far too long, people across the United Kingdom have been let down and taken for granted by this Conservative government and this out-of-touch Conservative Party. But with this election, we have the chance to win the change our country so desperately needs.
They're all talking about change, 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 change. Reform, Richard Tice claiming no nonsense from the other parties and that they will be standing 630 candidates. Do they even have 630 candidates?
Everybody feels worse off after 14 years of Tory failure. That's the result of incompetence and these experts, along with weak, feeble politicians who have broken Britain. And sadly, that failure of the establishment and the experts manifests itself in the great scandals that we hear about.
The SNP made their voices heard.
Never has a government deserved to lose more than Rishi Sunak's government. You want higher living standards and a fairer country where everyone can lead secure, happy, healthy lives. You want a national health service you can rely upon. Most of you think that Brexit was a terrible mistake. You don't think Westminster works for Scotland, and you want Scotland to have a strong voice. All of those things sum up what I am about.
And the DUP?
There's a good opportunity here, but there's a choice for the people of Northern Ireland. Do they want to elect people who don't bother to turn up for them in our national parliament, or they do want to vote for people who are prepared to go to Westminster and put forward the best case for Northern Ireland as part of this United Kingdom? That's the history that we have, and that's the message that we will bring.
So that's pretty much it. The best of, well, I don't know, any of them take your fancy? Here we go again.
You're joking. Not another one?
It's been a mucky old week. Well, coming up, comedian Josh Howie will be making light of this week's top stories in Muck the Week at 3:20. It's my hot topic in my roundtable discussion. We'll be talking about sepsis as inspiring Conservative MP Craig McKinley returned to Parliament this week after his battle. Then at 3:35, Uri Geller will be live to discuss the impact of the UK's general election on the war on Israel and in Israel. And joining me to shine a light on the political hot seat today is, of course, Sir John Curtis, polling expert and professor of politics at the University of Strathclyde. He's in my political spotlight at 3:45. That's coming up. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Send me your views. You can post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say.
What are we going to do, just go through?
Right, so joining me now, comedian Josh Howie. Let's muck the week. Well, it's been pretty mucky. All right, let's kick it off. Rishi Sunak's speech. I mean, there he was in the rain with the music in the background.
Well, I don't think it was rain. I think it was sweat.
You think it was... on top of his
just
clothing.
more drenching. No, not just his sweat, just the sweat of all the Tory MPs as well, realising that they're most likely out of a job very soon.
It was so tragic. And the music as well, with the Labour Party anthem playing.
That was pretty funny.
I mean, why could they not stop the music? I mean, at least just out of respect.
Well, it was, I think, was it Steve Bray who did it? I mean, I feel for Rishi, I genuinely do, but that, I've got to go, that was funny.
It was very funny. I mean, it's sort of like that, sort of almost like a drowned rat, as if everyone's jumping off the ship of the Tory party, all of them leaving, an exodus of MPs.
It's a sad state of affairs where I heard that one of the reasons why they went to an election now was that they didn't think this country would get any better or would only get worse over the next 6 months or so. And if we're at the pinnacle of where a Tory government can take us, that's a sad state of affairs.
Well, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer, he responded with his speech. Now, I mean, I watched that and thought he looked surprised. Oh, my God, I might actually have to do something.
I don't know, the moment that he's been sort of clinging on to for years. But that, I mean, for me, him talking about gesture politics and then he is, like, surrounded by, I don't know how many British flags UK flags they could get into the room at one time. And he was literally dressed as a UK flag. I mean, he had the red tie, the white shirt, it's sort of a bluish.
Blue.
So it was pretty much the whole thing was just like, I'm a patriot and I am not Jeremy Corbyn. That seemed to be the main message. Not that I'm a change from the Tories, but I'm a change from the 2019 disastrous election for Labour, deservedly so.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn is hovering around now. He's an independent candidate, isn't he, somewhere in North London?
Yes, I'm not sure who I'm going to campaign for, but I just know I'd be out there campaigning against him. Gladly.
Interesting. And what about the Liberal Democrats? Because for me, there was always a confusion as to what colour their banner was, whether it was yellow or orange.
Yellow, orange, I know, but maybe that sums them up. Yeah. We don't really know what they're about. He seemed very smiley. He was very happy to have a chance of getting a couple more MPs. I also quite like they had a sort of handheld camera that was very sort of cinema verite. It just showed that the Lib Dems are dangerous and crazy.
We're down with the kids, we're crazy, we've got it going on.
Whilst surrounded by sort of OAPs in the background. Yes, exactly.
So you've got them. Who else have we got? We've got the SNP.
Yes.
I mean, they have wrecked Scotland pretty much.
I know, that was so sort of calling the kettle black or whatever, but just because it's like, we accuse the Tories of wrecking the UK. Yeah, and the SNP have wrecked Scotland. This is their coming now. You can't talk about the NHS when they control the NHS in Scotland and it's actually worse somehow than the UK, than England and even Wales. So, this is a coming for the SNP, and again, about time.
Yeah, there's a feeling that Labour will do well. I mean, they used to have a stranglehold on Scotland, and then, of course, the SNP came up. And to me, when I would have thought that looked like a failure of the Labour government to not, or the Labour Party to lose their stronghold on Scotland, which hopefully, in my view, probably means the union is safer if at least one of the mainline parties is...
Absolutely. I mean, be careful what you wish for. And the Scottish people wanted, or enough of them wanted, nationalism, and they wanted to go by themselves, and they saw what would happen if an SNP government came into power, and they had it, and it didn't work out well.
It was a bit like the management of Brexit, really, if you look at it. I mean, we've been given control, and we seem to have royally stuffed elements of it up and haven't, in my view, taken advantage of some of the things. What about the DUP? They're there too?
My only insight is that he's a big boy. If he told me to vote for him, I would probably just do it out of fear. Just him just going, just vote for me. I'd be like, yeah, mate, OK.
So that is pretty much our roundup of candidates. And
we're not mentioning Greens?
Well,
Greens in any way?
But do you think the Greens have some sort of...
No, I think they've become the sort of bastion of cranks. They got kicked out of Labour, and I feel like the Greens have been sucking them in. And I don't even know if it's the funniest thing for me seeing Greens is they're sort of desperately trying to connect their new followers, which are frankly a lot of Islamist followers, and trying to connect the war in Gaza somehow to saving the environment.
Yeah, it's an odd thing, isn't it? What I think part of it is the Greta Thunberg connection, because of course Greta got herself involved in all of that, probably because she was losing relevance, and a lot of people are actually going off net zero. The Conservatives, I know, are considering dropping that in as a main policy. Liz Truss talked about that this week, but interestingly, I think she's conflated it, so it's helped them with their sort of cause. I don't see the connection.
No, there is no connection. I think the connection is she's young and a bit ignorant and stupid, like so many of the people out on marches, and it's virtue signalling, and she's surrounded by other young, stupid people, and I think it's a shame, and it does her cause of the environment, I think, actual harm.
Do you think young people should get the vote? Because Keir Starmer was saying that if you work, you should vote, which would then...
No, I think this is a stupid mistake. I can't believe this is the first big policy that he's announcing. I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
Shocking.
There's much more out there, much more important stuff to focus on. Housing for many people, the NHS, immigration. There's just a lot more out there. This is like a fringe issue. It's so obviously self-serving because, of course, younger people are going to vote Labour anyway. And I'm probably going to vote Labour. I haven't fully committed, but I just think it's just bad optics and a bad thing to focus on, where there's so much more out there that needs our attention.
Well, I personally have no idea who I would vote for, but I will urge everyone to exercise their vote. It is important, people, for that to be the case. So, Josh, then, so 16-year-olds, yes or no to the vote? Ridiculous, self-serving policy that
stupid.
you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't get it at all. And young people are stupid. And not just 18-year-olds are stupid. I'm stupid. But 16-year-olds are even more stupid.
Well, the thing is, because I'm undecided, I'm an oldie, so if I can't work out what to do, then I don't see how they're going to do it either.
No.
I think it's shocking.
No, silly.
Yeah. So, Josh, when are you back on? When are you back on?
I'm back on this evening. I'm hosting Headliners, so please tune in, watch the show all day, watch the channel, and I'll put on a suit in the meantime, and we'll see you in a few hours.
Thank you very much, Josh Howie, on Headliners tonight, 11 o'clock. Make sure you stay there for that one. If you just joined me, welcome aboard. It's 19 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll be going live to Tel Aviv to hear Uri Geller's thoughts on how the UK election will impact Israel. But next, the inspiring Conservative MP Craig McKinley returned to Parliament this week after his battle with sepsis. We'll find out more about the life-threatening condition and, of course, his battle. This is GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News Breakfast. every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So,
It does.
Again, we wish her
What's
very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just like saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. That people forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know who I
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him to
3
go.
miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 23 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app. It is completely free. But now, of course, it's time for our roundtable discussion. And the inspiring Conservative MP, Craig McKinley, he returned to Parliament this week after his battle with sepsis. Now, he had extreme surgery that removed both his hands and feet, replacing them with prosthetics. He sat down with GB News' Christopher Hope.
But one day, his life changed suddenly. It was one of those days that will be etched on Craig's memory for life. It was the end of September 2023. He was getting ready to go on holiday with his family. He started to feel unwell, and unexpectedly, Craig had contracted sepsis.
So the Grim Reaper let me survive, but he's taken his payment in 4 of my limbs. But that's the way it is. Plenty worse things happening.
That is it. No way back. And yes, he was very matter of fact. He accepted that they black, they not any use anymore. And that's it. So he had a very long operation. And he did come back without those black arms and legs. And by then I was fine. I just knew that is it. That's the new future, new life begins.
And of course, I mean, it could have been a lot worse, but his wife was brilliant. I mean, she's a pharmacist, and she said that they were actually going to cut his arms off at the top of his arms and the top of his legs, but then she managed to talk them out of it, and thankfully he survived this. Well, joining me now is psychologist and social commentator Dr. Pam Spur, and also NHS GP Dr. David Lloyd. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, I want to start with you, Dr. David Lloyd. What is sepsis? What exactly, how does it work? What is it about?
So it starts with an infection, very often a bacterial infection, and it overwhelms the body's defense system. And as a result of that, the body goes into organ failure, everything fails. And the tragedy is that that process starts blood clotting in the places where it shouldn't. And so the periphery of the body, so the hands and legs, lose their oxygen supply and go black. And tragedy occurs when gangrene sets in, and really you have to set the surgeons on the patient to cut the limbs off before they cause any problems to the rest of the body. Sepsis is an incredibly common condition. There are 5 people dying every hour in the UK of sepsis.
Wow. Now, this is... Most people would have heard of it, but have thought that it wouldn't really affect them. Dr. Pam Spur, I understand that you have had a personal experience with the disease or the condition.
Yes, I did. In 2016, I'd been skiing in France. I woke up the last morning of a holiday with spider bites on my hands, which were horrendously itchy. So I didn't think anything of it. I thought, well, you know, I went to the chemist there. The French chemist gave me some ointment, said definitely a spider. There were 2 fangs for each bite, 2 little, you know, puncture marks. Got home to London, was going to go on This Morning television for an appearance, went along and they were getting really bad. And I said to the makeup artist, I better put some makeup on this. My hands are looking horrible. And so she slapped on makeup, which was the worst thing to do because makeup is full of bacteria. After the program, I called my daughter-in-law, who was a trainee GP, and she said, if your GP can't see you this afternoon, go to A&E. Went to my GP, he put me on oral antibiotics, which is classically the first thing you do for, say, something like infected bites. But then he said if it gets worse, and he drew a circle with a pen around the bites on each hand and said if the redness spreads, go to A&E. By that night, I made my first trip to A&E. They put me on an IV, and they told me to come back the next day for a second IV, and they, again, were doing circles, and the circles were getting bigger. By day 3, the junior doctor in A&E looked with such panic, called a consultant, and the consultant admitted me into my own room. I was on drips for 8 days. The cellulitis became sepsis. My body overreacted. I was very ill by the end of that week. But then they kept trying different cocktails of antibiotics, which they will do in hospital. If you're not responding, they throw everything at it. And the final cocktail had an enormous effect on day 6. And by day 8, I was released. I had a community nurse come tend my hands for a week after that. She came on 5 different occasions. And then they have recovered with just darker skin from the sepsis and some scarring from where the tendons got. My hands were so bloated, the tendons were pulled. I'm lucky because I caught it early talking to my daughter-in-law, as I say, was a trainee GP. You're 50% more likely to survive if you catch it early. And that is the big message. You know, get into your doctor, get into A&E. And I'm sure, as Dr. Lloyd can say, there are many different symptoms of sepsis. Mine started with the skin infection, cellulitis, but then I went into sepsis.
So, David, what should we look out for to give us an indication as to whether we have sepsis or not? Because it's, as I understand, quite difficult to initially work out what it is. It takes a while, and then eventually it becomes obvious.
Yes, I think so. I think that since COVID, a lot of us, of course, have got these little gadgets at home which measure our oxygen and our pulse rate. So you can be a little bit more accurate than we used to be. But I think a sudden onset of, I think we can, I'm sorry I'm going to go on a bit, but divided up into adults and children. So if you're an adult, if you suddenly develop acute confusion, you get slurred speech or get confused, when you start shivering with a very high temperature, or alternatively, a very low temperature, if you haven't passed any urine in a day and you get very out of breath and you're breathing very fast. And a lot of people who get sepsis say, it feels as if I'm going to die. They feel so dreadful that they think something awful is going to happen. And as has been demonstrated, if your skin starts to mottle, or if you get a rash that doesn't fade away when you press on it, those are all the signs that you should think sepsis, and really don't stop. You've got an hour to get the antibiotics into you, and then you'll do all right.
Really? So it's...
Obviously, I was going to say, it's more difficult in children, and it's particularly more difficult in babies. And so in babies and the very elderly, those are the key groups that really do suffer the most from sepsis. So if you're a mother of a young baby, you've got a much tougher job trying to identify sepsis in your baby. But if your baby's not feeding, if your baby's breathing very fast, if your baby's got a temperature, And particularly if you've got this awful meningococcus rash where it looks like blood under the skin, and when you try and stretch the skin, it doesn't disappear. Those are the signs to call for help straight away.
OK, well, thank you very much for that. That's Dr. David Lloyd and also our political commentator, Dr. Pam Spur. Thank you very much for your thoughts. That's so, yeah, obviously, if you are worried about anything like that, of course, go straight to A&E, you know, because sepsis is quite a serious condition. As you saw in Craig's condition, it can take over quite quickly as well. If you just tuned in, welcome. It's coming up to 31 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up at 4, GB News is People's Poll, the statistics. We're checking those out and how each party is currently doing. But first, here are your latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Nana. 3:31, our top stories, and we start with some breaking news. A single-occupant aircraft has crashed into a field near Coningsby in Lincolnshire. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene just before 1:20 this afternoon. There are multiple media reports that the plane involved is a Spitfire, which was taking part in a Battle of Britain memorial event. Road closures are in place and motorists are being urged to avoid the area. Now to other news, and Sir Keir Starmer says the voting age should be lowered to 16. Speaking to reporters, the Labour leader said if you can work and pay tax, then you ought to be able to vote. It comes as both major parties pitch their messages to voters on the first weekend of the election campaign, with the government focusing on the economy. Well, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is ready to see in a new parliament. He was speaking after the number of Tory MPs stepping down reached 78. That's a post-war record. It also surpasses the previous high prior to Tony Blair's victory in 1997. Well, there are still waits of around 2 hours in the port of Dover this afternoon as an estimated 20 million cars hit the road for the bank holiday weekend. The port says there's congestion at the French border too, and they're working closely with Kent Police to put additional traffic management measures into place. Well, if you want all the latest headlines, you can sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Straight back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Still to come, Sir John Curtis, polling expert and professor of politics at the University of Strathclyde, will be in the political hot seat to shine a light on the latest polling. But coming up next, we'll be going live to Tel Aviv to hear from Uri Geller and his thoughts on how the UK election will impact Israel. Don't go anywhere.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome if you've just tuned in. Where have you been? This is GB News. We're on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now to get the latest from Israel. Now, as earlier this month, people in England and Wales voted in local and mayoral elections. At first glance, Labour appeared to dominate, with the Conservatives losing over half their races. However, despite winning in many areas, Labour's support saw a decrease in areas with a high number of students and Muslims, who cited Gaza as the reason for their shift away from the party. So the question I'm wondering is, what impact could the up-and-coming UK general election have on Israel and vice versa? Well, joining me now is performer and mystifier Uri Geller. So, Uri, what's on your mind?
OK, look, wow, Nana, what a week. So much has happened. Britain calls an election. The president of Iran is killed. The International Criminal Court is thinking of arresting our prime minister. Wow, that's enough to fill an entire program. But first, look at this. This is heartbreaking. The IDF just found the bodies of these 3 Israelis who were murdered on the 7th of October. Hamas took their bodies to Gaza and held them. Such cruelty. Now, did you know Labour supports a ceasefire before we get the rest of our hostages back? That's unbelievable. So whoever becomes the British Prime Minister in July really matters to Israel. On the one hand, Keir Starmer supports a ceasefire, and on the other hand, Rishi Sunak doesn't. Nana, as you know, I'm an Israeli, but I'm also a British citizen. So I do care about the outcome of the elections. Now, the main party's policies are actually very different about Israel. Keir Starmer is more enthusiastic about recognizing a Palestinian state than Rishi Sunak. And in my opinion, this is very dangerous. You can't force a Palestinian state on Israel. It would be immediately overrun by Hamas, and they would attack Israel again and again. Now, you also just had local elections. And Labour lost. Labour lost in areas with large Muslim populations, as you said. This is also very, very worrying, because they now have to win back the support of voters who don't even believe Israel should exist. Now, look at this. Look, all these marches in London, all the student protests, all the unions, most of them are Labour supporters. And for them, the Palestinians are the #1 cause. Look, Nana, it makes no sense. What has the Palestinians got to do with NHS waiting lists or education or jobs? But at every Labour conference, and you know that, you see Palestinian flags everywhere. I believe if Keir Starmer gets in, there will be a surge in anti-Semitism, because the left is obsessed with Israel. All the anti-Semitism and hatred of Israel, which rose up under Jeremy Corbyn, is still there under the surface. And I think It will sweep Keir Starmer away. Now, finally, there is also something else. Did you know, Nana, that Labour said they would respect an order by the International Criminal Court to arrest our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu? I hope you know that. Because just to be clear, the ICC has not issued an arrest warrant, but it is thinking of doing so. So if Labour gets in and our Prime Minister visits London, he could get arrested on the tarmac of Heathrow Airport. This can never be allowed to happen. So finally, there are 6 weeks until the vote, and a lot is going to happen between now and then. So Nana, you know that we will have a lot to talk about until then. I love you all. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you very much, Uri. That's the brilliant Uri Geller and his thoughts on the up-and-coming elections and what effects it might have on this country. Although I will say that, of course, the students at those rallies would say that they're fighting for peace. And on the one hand, though, I do agree that it is interesting that our governments, whichever be them Labour or Conservative, think that they can sort of impact or tell other countries what to do and as to how they solve their own wars. And I just don't see that working in any way, shape or form. But, hey, that's my thoughts. So what are yours? gbnews.com/your say. Next, though, Sir John Curtis is polling. He's a polling expert and professor of politics at the University of Strathclyde, and he'll be in the political hot seat to shine a light on the latest polling.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. Over the next 24 hours, it's all change as areas of rain move in from the Atlantic, some heavy showers developing as well. And that's all thanks to low pressure, which is going to dominate through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers, and we can see that rain already pushing into some western areas. Today's rain still lingering across eastern parts of England, pushing its way northwards, some heavy bursts possible into the early hours as we can see. Most areas cloudy, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards. But this will keep temperatures up, for most staying in double figures, turning breezy around the coast and over the hills as well. So it means a bit of a grey start to Sunday morning. Some glimmers of sunshine perhaps first thing across southwest England. But let's take a look at the details for Sunday morning. We can see a dry start across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 spells of sunshine, but rain across the central belt, southern parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland, some of this heavy at times too. Temperatures on the mild side to start the day. We can see cloudy across the rest of England and Wales too. Outbreaks of rain in places, but some sunshine developing from the southwest, and these brighter skies will slowly push northwards as we move through the day on Sunday, with the rain becoming more confined to the northern half of the UK. Further south, though, we will see some heavy thundery showers develop, particularly across parts of England and Wales. These could lead to some local disruption, some hail, some localised flooding as well. Temperatures a little lower compared to Saturday, generally the mid to high teens, locally up to around about 21 degrees across southeast England. Into the evening time, thunderstorms will slowly fade away. We'll still see further spells of rain across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England as we head into the early hours. And then the next few days, it does remain unsettled. Further showers on Monday, further spells of rain Tuesday and into Wednesday.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome if you've just tuned in. This is GB News on TV, online And on Digital Radio, I'm Nana Akua, and it's now time for this week's Political Spotlight. And joining me to shine a light is Sir John Curtis. He's a polling expert and Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. So thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much, John, for joining us. So this is a very exciting moment, actually, in polling. Sorry, my computer's... Oh, crikey. What's happened here? Sorry, my computer started. But this is a very exciting moment in politics. Now, you famously said 99% chance Labour of winning. Is that still
No,
up
hang
there?
on. Can I correct you straight away? Sorry. I said there was a 99% chance that Sir Keir Starmer would be the next Prime Minister. That is not the same thing as the Labour Party winning, which we might want to get to.
Is it not the same thing? Is that not the same thing?
No, it's not. No. OK, so let me walk you through it, all right?
All right, go for it.
The point is that, I mean, usually what people mean by winning is the party winning an overall majority. Well, the truth is there's quite a range of possible results that we would end up having a hung parliament. But in a hung parliament, what you need to understand is that the Conservative Party would be short of friends. Basically, we know that neither the Liberal Democrats nor the SNP would be willing to vote for the King's Speech of a minority Conservative administration. They might perhaps just about get the support of the DUP. So unless the Conservatives are at around 315 to 320 seats, even if they've got more seats than Labour, Sir Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister.
So that is different, isn't it? Although I'm reading here, this is what it says in the Telegraph. Actually, Labour has 99% chance of winning elections, says Professor John Curtis.
Well, as you
That's
know
what
now,
they said, yeah.
Wonderful as the journalism profession is, sometimes as the Chinese whispers of Twitter go along, what you originally said sometimes gets somewhat translated.
So, look, we did some polling ourselves, and according to our People's Poll, Labour are 27 points ahead, with Labour on 47%, and the Conservatives on 20%, Reform on 12%, and Lib Dems on 9%. Greens are on 8%. Does that roughly reflect the polling?
Just tell me, Nana, is that done since Wednesday's announcement?
Yeah, I'll find out for you. I'll ask them there when this was done. But what is the polling saying now?
Okay,
then,
well, broadly speaking, at least I'm aware of 4 polls that have been conducted since Wednesday's announcement. So as of Wednesday's announcement, if you take the average of the 13 companies, including people polling, who had polled at some point during May, what you discovered was that on average Labour were 21 points ahead of the Conservatives. It's quite a range. At the lower end, one poll put it as low as 16, but the other end, another one put it as high as 26. Now, since then, since Wednesday's announcements, I'm aware of 4 polls that have so far been published, and basically they do not show any significant change. 1 or 2 have the Conservatives down a little bit, and another one has them up a bit, and others have Labour up a bit, and another one has them down. Crucially, and I think this is perhaps the thing that we're most looking for in the early polls, no immediate sign of Reform, who are the party that at the moment are taking more votes off the Conservatives than anybody else, no sign of their vote being squeezed. So basically, we have had now half a week's of campaigning, and it's not made any difference.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people were worried that, and I think the Conservatives are worried, and one of the reasons I suspect Rishi pulled the election early was so that Reform couldn't form and be so, powerful as they could be in 6 months' time, because I'm sure they're probably scrabbling around to find 630 candidates for each of the seats. So I think that's going to be a struggle.
That, of course, is one of the things that we'll discover down the track, although the last time I saw anything about this, Reform were claiming to have quite a lot of candidates in place. But I mean, more broadly, we are asking ourselves, well, to what extent are Reform not just simply able to fight an air war, i.e. with you in the media, but also on the ground, getting leaflets to people's doors, being able to run a canvassing operation, etc. And that we're very uncertain. But in the end, I wouldn't be that surprised if Reform's vote gets squeezed somewhat. But the thing here you have to remember is that Reform's predecessor, the Brexit Party, did not fight Conservative-held constituencies in 2019. So even Reform at 5% means in most of those constituencies, it is Reform plus 5, plus 6, plus 7, and most of it coming from the Conservatives. And of course, that does therefore mean that Reform are most likely to do damage to the Conservatives in seats that the Conservatives are trying to defend.
Wow, yeah, it's going to be a very, very, very interesting election. I have to say, I'm glued to it. I'm finding the whole thing fascinating. What about the apathy and voting apathy? Because a lot of people are saying they can't work out who to vote for, so they're not going to vote for anyone at all, or some people are going to spoil their ballots. What do you have any polling that shows how apathetic people are?
Well, it's not necessarily a question of apathy, although it's certainly true that these days you have to give voters a reason to vote. Fewer of us have very strong emotional attachments to Labour or Conservative, Liberal Democrat or whatever. People do have to be persuaded and cajoled to the polls. And there are a couple of things that we know from our experience of previous elections, particularly the general election of 2001, which is that if, first of all, people think there isn't much difference between the parties, and of course, the Labour Party in particular has moved quite strongly towards the centre, and arguably the Conservative Party has certainly not moved any further to the right than it was 5 years ago. So there's less distance between the parties now. But then secondly, if they also conclude that the election is all over by the shouting, and that's the potential impact of a 21-point lead in the opinion polls, if, of course, it's sustained through the 6 weeks, then both those things are known to make it less likely that people are going to go to the polls. And to that, I think we can add an additional factor, which is that neither Sir Keir Starmer nor Rishi Sunak are particularly popular. Neither of them are gentlemen, admirable as they are in a whole variety of ways. The word charismatic is not one that immediately associates with them. The same thing is true with Sir Ed Davey. It's true of John Sweeney, north of the border. And in truth, I think you have to go back a very long time to find a previous occasion when we had a general election when, in a sense, none of the parties had a leader who was really able to communicate widely with the public. That's undoubtedly one of the reasons why there's a lot of interest in how much Nigel Farage is going to campaign for reform, because Mr. Farage does have the ability to reach out to the electorate. Or, of course, on the other side of the spectrum, what impact will George Galloway, who will have to try to defend his seat in Rochdale, which he won in the by-election, how much impact he will have. We do have two people who have charisma, but, of course, they're associated with relatively small parts of our political system.
And people are talking about the Muslim vote, although I know they're not one homogenous group of people who all think the same thing. But if we imagine it in that sense that their vote will have an effect, is that likely to have much impact on Labour?
Well, if the pattern of the local elections kicks through, and of course it may well be that some people who identify as Muslim who are upset about Labour's stance on Gaza, they might have been more willing to protest in the local elections than perhaps they will in a general election, but we'll have to wait and see. I think at the moment, we probably anticipate that indeed Labour's advance, such as it is across the country, will perhaps be weakest in constituencies with a large number of people who regard themselves as Muslims. But of course, most of the constituencies where that's the case, it's already a pretty safe Labour seat in most instances. So whether this will end up costing Labour even a single seat, but certainly probably not very much. So it could be difficult for Labour, it could be embarrassing for Labour, but whether or not it's going to stand in their way of getting the quite substantial majority that at the moment they seem to be heading for, that doesn't seem that likely.
Well, thank you very much, Sir John Curtis. He's a polling expert and Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Very interesting. It's going to be a fascinating few weeks or so. Coming up, though, I'll be joined by my amazing panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Plaza. Next, we'll be looking at the GB News' People's Poll statistics and seeing how each party is currently polling as the general election is set to take place on the 4th of July. Do not go anywhere. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Don't forget, you can download the GB News app and watch everything on the channel completely free.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. Over the next 24 hours, it's all changes. Areas of rain move in from the Atlantic, some heavy showers developing as well. And that's all thanks to low pressure, which is going to dominate through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers. And we can see that rain already pushing into some western areas. Today's rain still lingering across eastern parts of England, pushing its way northwards. Some heavy bursts possible into the early hours, as we can see Most areas cloudy, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards, but this will keep temperatures up for most, staying in double figures, turning breezy around the coast and over the hills as well. So it means a bit of a grey start to Sunday morning. Some glimmers of sunshine perhaps first thing across southwest England. But let's take a look at the details for Sunday morning. We can see a dry start across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 spells of sunshine, but rain across the central belt, southern parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland. Some of this heavy at times too. Temperatures on the mild side to start the day. We can see cloudy across the rest of England and Wales too. Outbreaks of rain in places, but some sunshine developing from the southwest, and these brighter skies will slowly push northwards as we move through the day on Sunday, with the rain becoming more confined to the northern half of the UK. Further south though, we will see some heavy thundery showers develop, particularly across parts of England and Wales. These could lead to some local disruption, some hail, some localised flooding as well. Temperatures a little lower compared to Saturday, generally the mid to high teens, locally up to around about 21 degrees across southeast England. Into the evening time, thunderstorms will slowly fade away. We'll still see further spells of rain across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England as we head into the early hours. And then the next few days, it does remain unsettled. Further showers on Monday, further spells of rain Tuesday and into Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome to GB News. It's just coming up to 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lauser. Up next, the election connection. Yes, it's my new little slot I've created. We'll be going through the latest GB News poll to see how the UK's political parties are shaping up. But coming up, with all major parties hot on the campaign trail, I'm asking, was Rishi Sunak right to call a general election for the 4th of July? Then, this week's difficult conversation now. I'll be speaking to Sasha Bailey after he gave up his plans to change gender. You really won't want to miss that story. It was all about the NHS waiting list. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 4, our top stories this hour. A single-occupant aircraft has crashed into a field near Coningsby in Lincolnshire. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene just before 1:20 this afternoon. There are multiple reports that the plane involved is a Spitfire, which was taking part in a Battle of Britain memorial event. Road closures are currently in place and motorists are being urged to avoid the area. We'll bring you more on this developing story as we get it. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says the voting age should be lowered to include 16 and 17-year-olds. Both major parties are pitching their messages to voters on the first weekend of the election campaign, with the government focusing on the economy. Speaking to reporters, the Labour leader said young people deserve to have their say.
I want to see 16 and 17-year-olds voting. They can go out and work. They can serve in our armed forces. And, of course, if they are out and working, they pay tax. And therefore, they should have a say over how the money they're paying in is being used. So, yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, if you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
78 Conservative MPs have now stepped down ahead of the summer election, which is a post-war record. It also surpasses the previous high, which took place prior to Tony Blair's victory in 1997. It comes as the Tories trail in the polls, with all parties continuing their election campaigning today. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is ready for a new parliament.
The Liberal Democrats have got a fantastic set of policies on the health service, on the economy and the environment. Today we're campaigning against the sewage problem, and we've led that campaign. I think overall we're just much more ambitious than some of the other parties, and critically we want to transform British politics. We think the politics in our country is broken, it needs to be changed, and we're the only party talking about that.
There are still waits of around 2 hours in the port of Dover this afternoon as an estimated 20 million cars hit the road for the bank holiday weekend. The port says there's congestion at the French border and they're working closely with Kent Police to put additional traffic management measures in place. A 17-year-old boy from Lancashire has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a woman was found dead on a beach in Bournemouth last night. Dorset Police said they were called to reports of 2 women stabbed on Durley Chine Beach at around 11:45 p.m. A 34-year-old was pronounced dead at the scene, while a 38-year-old was taken to hospital with serious injuries. President Putin is reportedly ready to pause his invasion of Ukraine with a negotiated ceasefire that would recognise current battlefield lines. According to 4 sources, the Russian president has grown frustrated by what he sees as Western attempts to derail possible negotiations. Asked about the report during a visit to Belarus yesterday, Putin said talks should resume and negotiations should be based on, quote, the realities on the ground. Ukraine's President Zelensky has previously said that peace, according to Putin's terms, is impossible. Well, despite today's rather sunny skies, thunderstorms and possibly hail could be on the way later on tonight. A yellow weather warning has also been issued from midday tomorrow, with heavy showers possible across large parts of England and the north of Wales. But the Met Office expects the wet weather to settle into light, patchy showers in time for the Monday bank holiday. And one of the most popular US presidents is getting the Hollywood treatment as actor Dennis Quaid puts his spin on Ronald Reagan.
What would you say is the issue of our time? No question about it. Communism and the Soviet Union. Get in the game, run for office.
The first trailer for a new movie about the 40th president has just been released. It tells the story of President Reagan's life, from confronting childhood bullies to becoming a Hollywood star and then taking his seat in the Oval Office. The cast includes Penelope Ann Miller as First Lady Nancy Reagan and Leslie Ann Down as Margaret Thatcher. Well, if you'd like all the latest stories, why not sign up for GB News Alerts? All you need to do is scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Right, so before we get stuck into the election connection and polling statistics, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, was Rishi Sunak right to call a general election? With Conservatives so far behind in the polls and a mass exodus in his own party, has the Prime Minister made the right choice, or is he captaining a sinking ship? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, was Rishi Sunak right to call a general election now? Then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time, and of course the legendary Angela Levin will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. On the menu, a new portrait of the Princess of Wales appeared on the front cover of Tatler magazine. It's received a lot of criticism, with the magazine being trolled online. Plus the garden parties at Buckingham Palace are well underway. Angela will give us all of that. And then at 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversations. Sasha Bailey, after he gave up on his plans to change gender, will be live in the studio. We'll hear why and how. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Send me your views, post your comments. Visit gbnews.com/your say. Right, but first, joining me now is GB News' political editor. Oh, no, before we do that, should we do my election connection? And it's all gone a bit crazy around here. All right, so this is some polling that GB News, our People's Poll, did, and this is what we discovered, OK? So this is what we discovered. So this is how far ahead. The Labour Party are apparently 47% ahead, and that is a GB News People's Poll. So we're polling a lot of people who watch and participate within GB News and on GB News. So this is what people who are watching this channel think, and of course the polling is wider than that as well. OK, let's have a look at the Conservative. The Conservatives are about 20% again, so the Conservatives are about 27 points behind the Labour Party. So it's quite serious, really. The Conservatives, it looks to me like they'll need to literally have a miracle for something different to happen. Let's have a look at Reform. Now, Reform, people were a lot worried that Reform would take on a lot of the Conservative voters, and at the moment, 12%, they are at 12%. That is according to our People's Poll. The Liberal Democrats, who have often made a big impact in many elections, appear to be behind at 9%. Now, of course, they have said, Ed Davies said he would join a coalition with the Labour Party should the Labour Party need him. And then finally, the Greens, let's have a look at the Greens Party. Now, they're on 8%, which is quite interesting, really. And as we talked earlier, a lot of people have been saying there seems to be a conflation with the Green Party and the pro-Palestine lobby, as we've seen in some of the marches with Greta Thunberg and people like that, sort of coming on with their so-called green credentials. So there we are, 8%. Let's speak to political editor Tom Harwood and get an update from him. So Tom, talk to me, give me an update on where we are with everything.
Yeah, this is really day 3 of full-time campaigning, day 4 since the election was called on Wednesday afternoon, and the leaders have been out and about. Rishi Sunak has been to 4 countries of the United Kingdom, all corners of the United Kingdom, but he's made some errors in his journeys. He ended up speaking from Titanic Quarter in Belfast yesterday. Now, insert your own metaphor for the campaign there. Also, of course, the launch when it was pouring with rain. I have to tell you, standing in Downing Street as I was alongside our political editor Christopher Hope for that speech, it was cold, it was sodden, it was not a good image, and you could hear things can only get better being blasted through the street by a permanent protester named Steve Bray. But here's the issue that people are talking about today. 78 Conservative MPs elected in 2019 deciding they will not contest this election in 6 weeks' time. They're standing down before their constituents have a chance to boot them out. That is the biggest topic of conversation today, and many people are asking, are they jumping before they have been pushed? Although clearly some of these individuals represent pretty safe seats for the Conservative Party, so even if they cling on, even if those seats stay blue, there'll be different faces in Parliament in just 6 weeks' time. It'll be a pretty profound changing of the guards. For their part, the Labour Party is talking about the cost of living today, although they seem to have been slightly upended by questions over a commitment that Keir Starmer has articulated today to lower the voting age to 16. All the while, Labour is backing bills to stop under-18s vaping, to reduce smoking for people who are younger as well, and lots of other inconsistencies. Big questions over what Labour considers to be a child or otherwise. But also, of course, the Lib Dems have been out and about, and the SNP launched their campaign earlier in the week as well. It's all go for a general election that is rapidly approaching.
Tom Harwood, he's there in our studio in Westminster. Thank you so much. Wow. So that's what's happening. What do you think, though? What are your thoughts? gbnews.com/your say. Joining me now from Kent is GB News' voice, Neil Charlock. Neil. Neil, what do you think about this then? You've heard all of that. Our own People's poll suggests that 47% of the people would support Labour, and those are our views. And where do you stand on what you've seen with all this electioneering?
I mean, I run a charity down in Kent, and I try to steer clear of politics myself. I find that they're both just the same to me. Neither of them help me, so I just get on and do the work myself and not worry about who's in power, to be honest. I think the young people, letting the young people think, is probably a good idea. They've got a kind of a clean mind on it. I've seen 53 years of people making mistakes in government, so I think a fresh start, give the youngsters a chance, it's going to be their future, is a good idea.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Neil. That's Neil Charlock. Here's our voice. That's what he thinks. Right, let's welcome again to my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Matthew Larser, we saw your lovely Keir Starmer doing his thing. He looked like he'd been slightly caught unawares when he discovered that there was an election going on.
Well, at least he didn't get wet. I mean, Rishi Sunak tells us he's the man with a plan. Well, come off it. He isn't even the man with an umbrella. I mean, I think, to be fair, even independent observers would say that the Tories haven't had a very good few days because, of course, yesterday, where did Rishi Sunak turn up? Outside the home of the Titanic, in the Titanic
why
Quarter.
Did he do that?
I know. I mean, you want to be shooting your advisors. I think that, I'm not sure I did everything perfectly when I was a political advisor, but I didn't do that. And then when he got on the plane, either there or back, he was pictured right in front of the exit side. And I can't tell you, I used to work very closely with Neil Kinnock's daughter, who was running the events side, and I was running the broadcast side in the 2015 Labour campaign. And we spent our lives trying to avoid exit signs. Every shot shouldn't have the exit sign in it. Begging venues if they put a blanket over the exit sign, so the photographers, because that's what the photographers are always looking for. So the Tories have had a bad few days. I think Labour's had a kind of solid start. I thought Keir looked good on Wednesday when the announcement was. I think we're not yet into the meat of the campaign for many of them.
Lizzie Cundy.
Oh, the Tories, it's like the rats are leaving the sinking ship.
Very true, isn't it?
And Rishi actually looked like a drowned rat himself, didn't he? And I just can't believe that image of him as he walked away, drenched through. I'm surprised his Prada suit hadn't shrunk, like his own party is shrinking with 78 leaving. Look, you know why he did this? It is the fear of Farage. He was genuinely worried about Nigel, and that is why he's rushed it. And I just think, there was that music. I mean, I shouldn't laugh with things can only get better, but Rishi knew things could only get worse.
Do you think
it's now at number 6?
Do you think that is the truth? Because actually, some people might say he's played a blinder. First of all, he's blindsided everybody. Nobody was expecting
including
it.
his own side.
Secondly, well, a lot of them have been in power for a long time. So you've been in power for 14 years, 15, you've been held in this office for so long. Some of them longer, even though Conservatives weren't in power at that point, they may still have held their seat. So some of them have been in there for, 20 years or however long.
Years, yeah.
So there's a lot of them want to leave, and I think you might want to do that. But let's be honest here, he has wrong-footed, in my view, he's wrong-footed reform. Because reform needs to form. They haven't got that. They got their 600 MPs.
Nigel actually said, you know, he was totally shocked, hadn't got enough time for his campaign or constituency. You know, we got under 6 weeks. Nigel couldn't do it. He wanted to do it, but it just wasn't possible.
Exactly.
So, but he's going to spread himself all over. He's going everywhere. He'll be campaigning. You know what Nigel's like. He's going to fight for this. And he's livid with how the Tories have treated him, what they've done to Brexit and everything else. And let me tell you, they're their own worst enemy, I'm afraid, the Tories. But there we have, you're saying Keir Starmer. I mean, how many Union Jacks are we going to see him?
Shall we take a look at some of that? Let's have a look at Rishi Sunak at the beginning when he did his speech, where he sort of got drenched at the start. But take a listen.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Yeah, so there he was there. Now, this is the rally that he spoke at a little while later.
On the 5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. And he has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises that he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, how can you know that he wouldn't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister? We Conservatives have got a clear plan, with bold action, to secure our future. So let's take that message and that vision of a secure future to every corner of our United Kingdom, and let's show Labour that the British people will never be taken for granted.
British people never be taken for granted. Yeah.
I thought he certainly was a much better speech, the second one, than the first one. I mean, the truth of the matter is, a lot of people zone out of politics, but they're not zoning out of the rain incident. It keeps giving. There are so many memes on social media. People who've never thought about politics in their lives are thinking about that. It will go down in history as one of the worst moments of political communication. But obviously he'll recover from that.
Well, I'm not surprised. You said he's wrong-footed Nigel Farage, which he did, but he looked surprised himself about the election. It was so unorganised. It was shambolic. It was a mess. Look, he even went to Wales and asked how they're going to
yes, that was... I forgot that. Yes.
Wales aren't in the Euros.
Oh, dear.
It was one mistake after the other.
Things can only get better, as Lizzie says, for the Sunak campaign.
You said it was... You thought it was a bad speech. What about Keir Starmer, though? He was somewhat lacklustre, don't you think? Have a listen.
Most importantly of all, we do all this with a new spirit of service. Country first, party second. A rejection of the gesture politics you will see in this campaign, I have no doubt, from the Tories and the SNP. I'm well aware of the cynicism people hold towards politicians at the moment. But I came into politics late, having served our country as leader of the Crown Prosecution Service. And I helped the police service in Northern Ireland to gain the consent of all communities. Service of our country is the reason and the only reason why I am standing here now asking for your vote.
So there he is, asking for everyone's vote. I mean, look, come on, it was dull as different.
He would say himself, look...
He talked about gesture politics, and there were two Union Jacks either side of it.
It's on our membership card now. We're a very patriotic party.
Exactly. He's the master of the gesture.
Well, look, he would say himself that he's not Obama. He's not, you know, he's not the world's sort of most exciting speaker. But what he does do is he is ready for government. He showed there that he's a prime minister in waiting, and he's brilliant on detail, which is, you know, frankly, what we need after the last few years of chaos.
I think he's quite vague on detail.
I actually think he's more vague than Boris, and I don't know if you...
Now, that's quite...
And if you've read Boris's article, I don't know whether you've read it in the Daily Mail, what he says of Starmer, I totally agree. I think he's one of the most frightening leaders we've ever had, and I'll tell you why, and you know what I'm going to say, because he doesn't know what a woman is, which...
He's very clear now what a woman is,
and he has no meat on the bones. He gives no detail. I was asking people yesterday what they think of Labour. You know, no one knows what they stand for, Matthew.
Well,
and he's
all oppositions, of course, all oppositions have use election campaigns because they get more attention.
You know, he reminds me of
Captain
Mannering in Dad's army, you know, because he can't make a decision and we're all going to be doomed.
I'm trying to work out how Rishi would be.
Listen, let's see what our viewers think. What do you think? Are we doomed? Are we? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up is Royal Roundup time. Angela Levin will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. Lots of things on the menu. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, was Rishi right to call a general election now? I've got a poll up right now on Twitter asking you that very question. Tell me what you think. So, was Rishi Sunak right to call a general election now? Cast your vote.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to me to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change. You've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, was Rishi right to call a general election now? Now, of course, this week, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, surprised us all when he told us voters will go to the polls on the 4th of July, American Independence Day. But his party is losing some very big names, which include Communities Minister Michael Gove and others like Andrea Leadsom. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, was Rishi right to call an election now? Well, I'm joined by broadcaster Emma Wolfe and also former Labour MP Dennis McShane. All right, I'm going to start with you. Dennis McShane, was he right to do this so quickly? I mean, 4th of July.
I genuinely think not. Just look at the few days already. It's been
pretty much disastrous for him. I'm not going to repeat all the stuff, all the gaffes in Scotland, Wales, everywhere. All the Tories now are like rats sinking the famous leaving the sinking ship. John Redwood, you didn't mention him. Michael Gove, Angela Leadsom, Theresa May. I mean, all the architects of Brexit. They've just left if I may say so, as he went to the Titanic exhibition, they've left the cabin boy on the Titanic, and he's really struggling.
To be fair to those ones, though, they have been with the Conservative Party and held office for some time. So, you know, if you've done, 16 or 20 years or something, after a while, you might want to naturally go.
OK, all right, I accept that. I accept that. But there's the morale in the Tory party. We can just see it, because when people leave a sinking ship, that's about morale. Now, Reform's got its tail up, the Reform Party. Labour just can't believe how lucky it is. The Greens are out there. I don't know if the Lib Dems are still alive anywhere in the country, but I wish them well. And so myself, the Scots are going bonkers because he's telling them all to cancel their holidays and stay at home to vote because he's having it in the Scottish holiday season. I just think myself that it's a poor call, but I'm not sure he's made many good ones in his year or so as Prime Minister.
All right, well, let's go to Emma Wolf. Was he right to call a general election now?
Nana, who can know whether he was right, whether he was in a total blind panic, whether he woke up and thought maybe the good economic news that he had was better than it was, that, you know, you get that false sense of optimism. It was all going to be okay. It wasn't going to rain on whenever it was, Monday. I don't know. Did he want his summer back? He just wanted to get it over and done with. Maybe he's just sick of the whole thing. Maybe he wants to get out to the West Coast, get that great job, get the kids into school for September. Maybe, maybe he prefers campaigning in the summer to the November rain. I don't know. For one thing's for sure, though, Nana, I don't think Labour and Reform, in fact, I know for a fact from a Labour MP and someone quite high up at Reform, they were not expecting this and they were not ready. In fact, someone at Reform said to me, this came as a huge shock. So they were not ready. You saw that in Keir Starmer's speech. He looked like a startled rabbit in the headlights.
Yeah.
He really did. But one thing's for sure, Rishi could not have planned more disasters, could he? I mean, even if they had sat down and planned out how the first 3 days could have been total calamity Jane, it's gone even worse than that.
But he might argue that actually the fact that he's wrong-footed all of his opponents, because that is the art, if you want to minimise the damage or maybe attempt to win, if you wrong-foot people in most things, in sport or whatever, then you will usually have a better chance of doing better, and it's like the element of surprise. Surely that would work for him. Dennis Mushane, I mean, everyone seems to be surprised, including perhaps even Rishi.
Well, look, Nana, look at the way we're all enjoying this conversation. If it was an idea to wrong-foot anybody, he's wrong-footed himself. I'm trying to strip my own feet up. And that's what he's done. Look, I feel sorry for the guy. He's got so little experience. He doesn't understand England. He thinks that Wales will be playing in the Euros. He just is out of touch. He's lived in California most of his adult working life. I'm sure he's a very nice father, a nice husband, a good man. I'm not criticising him. But what was he doing? Britain is a hell of a difficult country to run. Ask Winston Churchill, ask Margaret Thatcher, ask Tony Blair, ask David Cameron. He just wasn't, on the park.
I love it. You say, I'm not going to criticise the bloke, but what was he doing? And then you explain how inexperienced he is. Listen, I would agree he's inexperienced. Do you think, Emma, that perhaps what has happened here to the Conservative Party, there's no doubt about it, they have literally collapsed. I'm not being partisan, I don't support any of them. Do you think that perhaps the issue with getting rid of Boris was the wrong thing to do?
No, I don't think we can go back to the Boris days. I don't think Boris is going to be back, and I don't think he'd be the solution right now.
No, but not whether he's the solution. But do you think that they were wrong to get rid of him? Because had they done that, do you think they'd be in free fall in the way they are?
I think the party is so divided. There are so many factions. I mean, we had the six families. We have more factions than you can shake a stick at. I think they're almost at the stage where they need to be almost a decade out of power. I mean, it grieves me to say that because I don't particularly want Labour to be in power, but I think the Tories are so divided at the moment. I'm not sure whether Boris is the answer. A lot of people are against Boris as well. He didn't have a lot of friends within the party. But I mean, look, Tory MPs are voting with their feet. Nearly 80, I think, at the last reckoning. God knows, check our phones, probably more by now. But at the last reckoning, it's about 80. They're voting with their feet. And I think the voters are going to do the same, sadly.
Nana.
Go on, Dennis.
Nana?
Yes.
Is Emma available for a Labour Party political broadcast? I mean, she's great. We need her on the screen rooting against the Tories.
Well, do you think? I don't think she was. I don't think she was saying
I'm not
very
rooting
good.
against anyone. I'm very carefully not wearing red or blue at the moment. But I mean, you know, really, or turquoise or purple. But frankly, you know, I think actually this is a turning point. I think British politics is in an almighty mess, and that's the truth of it.
Agreed.
What do you think, so, Dennis? Do you think we're in a mess?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I want my team to win, but you know, we have to repair the country. We have to renew the country. We have to reform the country. Labour's been away with so many weird dead ends in the last few years. I think Keir Starmer's straight, honest, he's inexperienced. I think he does one thing at a time. So in that sense, I approve him as PM. But my goodness, the country is divided, it's demoralised, it's upset, it's uncertain. Putting ourselves out of that's going to be one heck of a task.
Well, you know, I don't think you can blame the Conservative Party for all of that. The Labour Party backed a lot of the things that they did as well. I think politics overall is a mess, and I agree with Emma completely. And sadly, I have to say, I slightly agree with Dennis McShane. Thank you very much, Emma Wolf and Dennis McShane. Really good to talk to you both.
Thanks, Emma.
So what do you think? Coming up to 31 minutes after 4 o'clock, this is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We will continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, was Rishi right to call a general election now? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Lizzie Cundy and Matthew Larser, still to come. My difficult conversation, model Sasha Bailey will be here to tell us about how he changed his mind about gender reassignment. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
31 minutes past 4, our top stories this hour. A single-occupant aircraft has crashed into a field near Coningsby in Lincolnshire. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene just before 1:20 this afternoon. There are multiple reports that the plane involved is a Spitfire, which was taking part in a Battle of Britain memorial event. Road closures are in place and motorists are being urged to avoid the area. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says the voting age should be lowered to 16. Speaking to reporters, the Labour leader said if you can work and pay tax, then you ought to be able to vote. It comes as both major parties pitch their messages to voters on the first weekend of the election campaign, with the government focusing on the economy. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is ready to see a new parliament in place. He was speaking after the number of Tory MPs stepping down reached 78. That's a post-war record. It also surpasses the previous high prior to Tony Blair's victory in 1997. And congestion in Dover has eased slightly, though drivers are still facing waits of up to 90 minutes. An estimated 20 million cars hit the roads for the bank holiday weekend. The port says there are also delays at the French border, and they're working closely with authorities across the Channel to clear those queues. Right, for the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. It's 4:33. This is GB News. Coming up, Royal Roundup. Our royal biographer Angela Levin will be live in the studio to give us the latest on behind the palace walls. But next, we continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, was Rishi right to call an election now? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Was Rishi right to call an election now? Get in touch at gbnews.com/your say. Tell me what you think. Cast that vote now.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
The Eurovision, according to figures out this morning, had its most disastrous night to date because viewing figures are down by 2.5 million.
So the BBC had a drag queen on telling everyone that she was boycotting it.
Who was boycotting it?
Someone called Crystal, who came on the Newsnight
to
say that she was boycotting her North London party because of Israel. So maybe that's why the figures are down.
They cancelled some Eurovision parties in gay bars in Soho.
Exactly. So I wonder whether that's what did it.
North London party.
I think the whole of Dalston basically not tuning in is what's caused this massive drop in ratings because of the whole controversy around Israel. I have to say, a lot of those performers needed to go and see a hygienist. I mean, that man who was the Irish entry, who's supposed to be a satanic witch. She does pop witchery or something.
She screeched.
And she screeched a lot, and then took her clothes off. Yeah. And then there was a sort of devil man who was gyrating around her, who obviously hadn't cleaned his teeth in years.
That was the vodka break.
Okay, fine.
That was the vodka break. When I went and got.
And I thought the Israeli entry. I mean, I didn't really like the song. I liked her dress.
Well, I just voted for it because
I thought the choreography was
I hated
awful,
the way she was
but,
besieged in a hotel room.
But I did also think that the Ukraine entry was quite interesting because I know that the Israeli entry got into trouble for referencing the October 7th attacks, and she had to sort of rewrite her stuff because you're not allowed to mention the war or anything like that, which is fine. But then the Ukraine entry was very war. I mean, they had kind of gunfire coming in over her.
The whole thing, there was double standards.
There was quite a lot of that,
I mean, the people outside, the queers of Palestine.
We're going to carry on paying for it, though, because, I mean, the BBC pays the lion's share of it. That's us.
Yeah.
And we do spectacularly every year.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. I'm very sweet. I don't bite, not without a good reason. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, was Rishi Sunak right to call an election now? Of course, this week he surprised us all when he told us, voters, that they will be going to the polls on the 4th of July. But his party's losing some big names, including Communities Minister Michael Gove, Andrea Leadsom, John Redwood. They're all leaving. Mind you, some of them have been there for a while. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, was he right to call that election? Well, joining me now is Lizzie Cundy and also Matthew Laza. Lizzie Cundy, I'm coming to you first.
No, I can't understand his logic. He had 6 more months at least in power, and the whole start of this has been a shambolic, just appalling farce. From when he did. I mean, when he launched, I just can't get it out of my head, him being soaked in the rain, that blaring music, it's just gone from bad to worse.
It was when he turned his back.
But when he turned the back, you've got the image of him just soaked, pouring down. I don't know what hair gel he uses, because his hair didn't move.
To be fair, he uses a lot of product, doesn't he?
The hair was rainproof, that's for sure. But what was he thinking? It was all disorganised. Now he's had the pictures at the exit sign asking Wales about how they're doing in the Euros. It's gone from bad to worse.
Well, then surely after that logic, he was wise to call it now, because it was only going to get worse, wasn't it? I mean, that song in the background, things are.
I know you couldn't make it up. I mean, you literally, if you were scripting, a comedy, you wouldn't have the kind of panoply of disasters of the last few days. It would just seem too far-fetched. I'm glad he has called the election, because I think the British people want their say. They want to bring out of their misery the Tories. And they want to stop fighting amongst themselves. Politically, if you were kind of looking at it strategically, I think it's daft. There are various things. He's having it in the middle of the Euros, in the middle of Wimbledon. The university students are back at home, which means they're ready to vote again. against the Tories, because young people at the moment, all the polls show pretty anti-Tory, in their home constituencies, which are more likely to be marginals. And in Scotland, which has gone down really badly in Scotland, the schools have already broken up, and the kind of tradition in politics is you don't have elections in school holidays, because obviously a lot of people have already booked their holidays. So as you said earlier, Nana, I think the only possible advantage is he thinks he's blindsided everybody, and he's going to run a presidential campaign.
He doesn't listen, and you know, everyone says Rishi doesn't listen to advice. He did this. It was like a shock reaction, not organised.
But he didn't even tell the cabinet.
In a panic. He looked in a panic.
Well, hold on. I mean, first of all, that's the assumption that the Labour Party are going to do better, the way you're speaking. They may do worse.
But I think the polls will tighten, certainly.
Well, they may do worse. But secondly, look, he's called it now. OK, by the 5th of July, it's going to be sunny, ideally. There'll be lots of boats coming.
Yes.
Keir Starmer can put to practice his border control or whatever it is he said, and then Keir Starmer will be dealing with the small boats crisis.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that that's a stupid idea for him to do that. He's done that now. Let's see what Keir Starmer's come out with his border control.
Nana,
Will
you're
it work?
correct. You're correct, because that's one of the reasons Rishi did this, because he knows when that warmer weather comes, there are going to be even more boats coming over. Now, this is going to be Starmer's problem. And I'm going to ask you, Matthew, how is he going to deal with it?
I can't wait to see it.
I could do the 5-point I can do the 5-point stop the boats plan. I mean, I think
you've got a 6-point plan.
There's a 6 points overall.
Matthew, ask me this.
Yes.
Why is Starmer backing out of doing this debate face
So he's
to
not.
face?
No.
Yes,
I know. I spoke to them.
Okay,
yesterday.
go on.
He's absolutely, because I was involved in the debate negotiations in 2015 when David Cameron wouldn't do a single debate with Ed Miliband as leader. He just refused to do any of them, and they're only between opposition parties. What Labour said, it will do several debates. It's not prepared to do 6 because they meet every week at Prime Minister's Questions, and it just takes up all of the campaign. But he's absolutely prepared to debate him.
But to me, this is some sort of performative nonsense, and actually allows him to invade giving description or detail for his policies. I would rather he sat down and said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and this is how I'm going to do it. I would like them all to do that. Actually, I don't want them to play silly boy, girl, silly banter between them, which is what I feel these debates become. Who can put the one down better than
the big interviews of the campaign. I mean, already, to be fair to them all, they've all been out and about. Some of them have spoken to GB News, and other channels. So I think we need to see a lot more of that, of all the parties, of the good old art of the political interview.
I do think so.
Whereas the debate is all bants.
The debate, Rishi will win. I think that's his only saving grace. I do think, because Starmer will show his true colours. He's got no personality. I mean, watching him there, you fall asleep.
And remember, you've got to have Ed Davey and John Swinney and some of them.
In the past, they have been real vote winners. I mean, remembering back to Nixon.
Nick Clegg.
Going back to Nixon and
Kennedy.
And that was a real game changer.
And I think
because Nixon was sweating and he didn't have the personality of Kennedy.
You want a mixture. So Labour's committed to doing debate, it's committed to Keir doing big interviews, it's committed to going around the country.
Let's see if they
it's not just debate.
Let's see if they commit to do something on GB News.
I'm sure they will.
Our viewers have said in their People's Poll, 40% of them have said that they would vote Labour.
I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of... You might have too much Keir on GB News.
I would like to see Keir Starmer also coming onto GB News, because the GB News viewers are perfectly decent people.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not having him not come on.
Why is he not doing that?
I was just going to say...
Let me speak to Lee Harris, because this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our Great British Voice, your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. We're going to Bristol.
The map is back.
It's back. Let's speak to Lee Harris. Lee, was Rishi Sunak right to call the general election now?
I think he was right to call a general election, but I think he's nuts for calling on the 4th of July. The optics of the announcement was terrible, as we all know. You know, whoever advised him to call an early election are probably the same idiots who advised him to go stand outside in the rain without a brolly. I mean, he really was an actual Tory wet nana. It looked ridiculous. I personally would have waited. I was all in on a November election because it would give the economy more time to improve and interest rates to come down. You know, maybe even send a few flights to Rwanda, if you believe he will, and I'm not sure anyone actually does. I mean, I think he did it mainly because he wanted to put reform on the back foot, which he clearly has. You know, Farage has openly admitted that it doesn't give him enough time to prepare to run as an MP, which I think will have significant impact on people who vote for reform, or not likely to now, I think. But, you know, now I'm forced to make a decision, Nana. I am really torn. I am livid with the Tories. You know I'm livid with the Tories. They do not deserve my vote after what they've done. But the Labour Party utterly terrify me, especially with a stonking majority. The amount of damage they could do in a single term is quite significant. You know, Slippery Starmer has just confirmed he's going to lower the voting age.
Well, yeah,
16.
Yeah, well, he may find that might not work out for him, because a lot of people might complain about that, because that to me feels like a way of securing your position, because younger people are more likely to vote for that, and to me that comes across as a slight. I don't think that's right. I don't think he should be allowed to do that. That's changing it for the electorate, and he needs to have a referendum whether he's allowed to do that or not. I don't think that's something he should make a decision on at all. But Lee Harris, thank you so much for your thoughts. Really good to talk to you. That's Lee Harris.
Can I say that Lee looks like Keir Starmer with his flag?
I'm going to count how many Union Jacks Keir Starmer's going to be standing next to. Let me tell you.
Well, listen to come My Difficult Conversations. Model Sasha Bailey will be here live to talk about his transition, or non-transition, thank goodness. But next, at 11, we'll be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls in my Royal Roundup.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. Over the next 24 hours, it's all change as areas of rain move in from the Atlantic, some heavy showers developing as well. And that's all thanks to low pressure, which is going to dominate through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers, and we can see that rain already pushing into some western areas. Today's rain still lingering across eastern parts of England, pushing its way northwards. Some heavy bursts possible into the early hours, as we can see. Most areas cloudy, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards. But this will keep temperatures up, for most staying in double figures, turning breezy around the coast and over the hills as well. So it means a bit of a grey start to Sunday morning. Some glimmers of sunshine perhaps first thing across southwest England. But let's take a look at the details for Sunday morning. We can see a dry start across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 spells of sunshine, but rain across the central belt, southern parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland. Some of this heavy at times too. Temperatures on the mild side to start the day. We can see cloudy across the rest of England and Wales too. Outbreaks of rain in places, but some sunshine developing from the southwest, and these brighter skies will slowly push northwards as we move through the day on Sunday, with the rain becoming more confined to the northern half of the UK. Further south, though, we will see some heavy thundery showers develop, particularly across parts of England and Wales. These could lead to some local disruption, some hail, some localised flooding as well. Temperatures a little lower compared to Saturday, generally the mid to high teens, locally up to around about 21 degrees across southeast England. Into the evening time, thunderstorms will slowly fade away. We'll still see further spells of rain across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England as we head into the early hours. And then the next few days, it does remain unsettled. Further showers on Monday, further spells of rain Tuesday and into Wednesday.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 47 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. If you just tuned in, welcome. I'm Nana Akua. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And every Saturday, I love to give you a rundown, and who better to do so than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, it's been a busy old time for the royals.
It has been a very busy old time. I thought I would start with Prince William. He was doing the third of the 3 garden parties that were going on, and it was pouring with rain. For the King Charles, it was beautifully sunny. This was pouring with rain, and you'd think it would be very sad he's not with his wife. I thought he did a brilliant job, because he got all his cousins together. They all dressed up absolutely beautifully, and they were very keen to be friendly and chatting. They even were chatting round to everyone. It doesn't mean they're going to have an important place within the royal family when he takes over. But it was just very nice. And Zara, I thought, looked stunningly beautiful with a pink hat, white dress with pink buttons on. She looked absolutely lovely. And she and Beatrice looked stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. And I thought that these two are very happily married and they're blossoming and they look wonderful. So it was very nice. It was very good. And it saved him from looking to be all alone.
Well, he's very good at that, isn't he?
Yes, he doesn't.
He doesn't.
He hides it.
He hides it really well, and he does his role nicely. Now, what about the awful trolling that Catherine's been receiving?
Yes.
That is just...
It is terrible.
Yeah.
And I have to say that a few of them are from Meghan's friends. I'm not saying she had anything to do with it.
You think it's part of the Sussex squad?
It's part of the Sussex squad. And saying, you know, other people go to work when they're having all the tests and looking, you know, having the medication, but she's not, you know.
So that's what they're saying. So these trolls, what kind of things are they saying? That she's not going to work, even though she's
9 million women have cancer a year. Nearly all of them carry on going to work, but she doesn't. You know, she's taking advantage of her position. Well, he doesn't know how ill she is. She doesn't know what sort of medication she's having. I thought it was so spiteful. And actually, what was worth seeing this terrible painting in Tatler that made her, you know, look nothing like her. And it was a bit like a sort of spinster headmistress.
Wouldn't that have been a nice... That picture was meant to be a nice picture of her.
Oh, yes.
Tatler. But it wasn't great, was it? I mean, I don't...
Not great. It was absolutely terrible. It looked nothing like her.
We've got the picture up on the screen. Take a look. I think I could have potentially drawn her better than that.
Yes, but she looks very tight-laced, and which Catherine isn't. And she looks very sort of serious and bossy.
Well, the face doesn't look like her face.
No. Well, anyone could do a white dress, you know. It just looks... if she had worn one, but that looked very similar. But there's not much credit for that. The whole thing is capturing the face. And King Charles was captured with the face, his own face, with the red painting. It looked just like him. You could work out his characteristics. But with... I thought it was very sorry. And I think, especially for women, when they're having this sort of treatment, that they feel very down about themselves. They feel they don't look right. Obviously, they're not made up and all that. And... you know, it's not a time when you want to see a picture and think, oh, my goodness, is this what people look nice?
No, that's not a great picture. Now, what about the elections? Because it seems that the King and everything is moving because of it, and we've got a lot of royal engagements and things that happen at this time.
Yes, well, you know, it means that he has to take more time and be at home. He can't go to all the things he wants to do. He's been doing 5 a day, which is probably made Camilla a bit cross. But what they still hope is that they can get the Japanese emperor and empress over. That's in July. That they can go to France for the 80th anniversary of the fighting. And he will be able to do 1 or 2 things. And Ascot he's very keen to do. Now, those aren't things that are political in any way. And if people complain about the Japan problem, I think that actually if you have the head of all the types, you know, Tories, all of them, then you feel that it's all right. Nobody's getting any special treatment. So I think that will be good. Just want to talk about Harry and Charles's argument, where Harry said he didn't want to stay, he wanted to go to a hotel. And it's come out now that actually King Charles is believed that he was put into, offered St James's, and Princess Anne stays there and Beatrice stays there.
And this was for when Harry came over for his 10th anniversary for Invictus.
And the policemen are wandering around with guns, and there's no chance of actually there being any problem there. So the fact that he said that it wasn't safe for him was not actually a very sensible thing to say, I don't think.
Well, he went to Nigeria, and that is, in the world ranking, it's ranked as quite a dangerous place.
Yes, one of the dangerous places in the world. So that was, again, I thought, being cruel and rejecting something, because it's next door to where the King lives, and he could have popped in at any time. It would have been much easier for both of them, but they didn't want that. But now Harry and Meghan have been invited to go to Ghana.
Oh, God.
And I think, you know, they can't actually go all the way around the Commonwealth and pretend that they're running it and they're much better than Prince Charles and King Charles and also Prince William. I mean, it's just not on. I think it has to be stopped.
Well, it's interesting because my parents are from Ghana. I have Ghanaian heritage, and I'm thinking she'll probably then claim there's a percentage that she's Ghanaian as well. I'll be like, hang on a minute, you were Maltese, you're also Nigerian,
and
now you're going to say you're Ghanaian
and
German.
Yeah.
Come on. Thank you very much.
Squeeze it in.
Yeah, let's get them all in. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's, of course, royal biographer Angela Levin. Right, well, if you just tuned us, welcome. Where have you been? We've got loads still to come. Do not go anywhere. My difficult conversation with model Sasha Bailey, the son of the legendary David Bailey, will be live to tell us about how he changed his mind about changing gender. And don't forget, coming up in the next hour, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. Over the next 24 hours, it's all changes. Areas of rain move in from the Atlantic, some heavy showers developing as well. And that's all thanks to low pressure, which is going to dominate through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers. And we can see that rain already pushing into some western areas. Today's rain still lingering across eastern parts of England, pushing its way northwards. Some heavy bursts possible into the early hours, as we can see. Most areas cloudy, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards. But this will keep temperatures up, for most staying in double figures, turning breezy around the coast and over the hills as well. So it means a bit of a grey start to Sunday morning. Some glimmers of sunshine perhaps first thing across southwest England. But let's take a look at the details for Sunday morning. We can see a dry start across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 spells of sunshine, but rain across the central belt, southern parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland. Some of this heavy at times too. Temperatures on the mild side to start the day. We can see cloudy across the rest of England and Wales too. Outbreaks of rain in places, but some sunshine developing from the southwest. And these brighter skies will slowly push northwards as we move through the day on Sunday, with the rain becoming more confined to the northern half of the UK. Further south, though, we will see some heavy thundery showers develop, particularly across parts of England and Wales. These could lead to some local disruption, some hail, some localised flooding as well. Temperatures a little lower compared to Saturday, generally the mid to high teens, locally up to around about 21 degrees across southeast England. Into the evening time, thunderstorms will slowly fade away. We'll still see further spells of rain across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England as we head into the early hours. And then the next few days, it does remain unsettled. Further showers on Monday, further spells of rain Tuesday and into Wednesday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life. I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. This is GB... It's not 4 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock. Where have I been for a whole hour? This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, my difficult conversation. I'll be talking to former model Sasha Bailey about abandoning his plans to become a transgender woman after initially signing up for hormone replacement therapy. Stay tuned, it's an incredible story. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be allowed to vote? After Sir Keir Starmer today confirmed his plans to lower the voting age if elected to government. Surely he should have a referendum for something like that. After a tribunal found that calling a woman frumpy at work could count as discrimination. My mini debate is going to be discussing this one. Has woke culture gone too far? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
It's exactly 1 minute past 5. Our top stories this hour. An RAF aircraft believed to be a Spitfire has crashed in Lincolnshire. The single-occupant plane crashed into a field near RAF Coningsby. No one else was believed to be involved. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene just before 1:20 this afternoon. It's believed that the aircraft was taking part in a Battle of Britain memorial event. Right, to other news, and Sir Keir Starmer says the voting age should be lowered to 16. Both major parties have been pitching their messages to voters on the first weekend of the election campaign, with the government focusing on the economy. Speaking to reporters, the Labour leader said young people deserve to have a say.
I want to see 16 and 17-year-olds voting. They can go out and work. They can serve in our armed forces. And, of course, if they are out and working, they pay tax. And therefore, they should have a say over how the money they're paying in is being used. So, yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, if you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
78 Conservative MPs have now stepped down ahead of the summer election, which is a post-war record. It also surpasses the previous high, which took place prior to Tony Blair's victory in 1997. It comes as the Tories trail in the polls. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is ready for a new parliament.
The Liberal Democrats have got a fantastic set of policies on the health service, on the economy and the environment. Today we're campaigning against the sewage problem, and we've led that campaign. I think overall we're just much more ambitious than some of the other parties, and critically we want to transform British politics. We think the politics in our country is broken, it needs to be changed, and we're the only party talking about that.
Congestion in Dover has eased somewhat, though drivers are still facing waits of up to 90 minutes. An estimated 20 million cars hit the road for the bank holiday weekends. The port, though, in Dover says that there are also delays at the French border, and they're working closely with authorities across the Channel to clear those queues. A 17-year-old boy from Lancashire has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a woman was found dead on a beach in Bournemouth last night. Dorset police said that they were called to reports of two women stabbed on Durley Chine Beach at around 11:45 p.m. 34-year-old was pronounced dead at the scene, while a 38-year-old was taken to hospital with serious injuries. President Putin is reportedly ready to pause his invasion of Ukraine with a negotiated ceasefire which would recognise current battlefield lines. According to sources, the Russian president has grown frustrated by what he sees as Western attempts to derail possible negotiations. Asked about the report during a visit to Belarus yesterday, Putin said talks should resume and negotiations should be based on, quote, the realities on the ground. Ukraine's President Zelensky has previously said that peace, according to Putin's terms, is impossible. Well, despite today's rather sunny skies, thunderstorms and possibly hail could be on the way later on tonight. A yellow warning has also been issued from midday tomorrow, with heavy showers possible across large parts of England and the north of Wales. But the Met Office expects the wet weather to settle into light, patchy showers in time for the Monday bank holiday. And one of the most popular US presidents is getting the Hollywood treatment as the actor Dennis Quaid puts his spin on Ronald Reagan.
What would you say is the issue of our time?
No question about it. Communism and the Soviet Union.
Get in the game. Run for office.
The first trailer for a new movie about the 40th president just been released. It tells the story of President Reagan's life, from confronting childhood bullies to becoming a Hollywood star and then taking his seat in the Oval Office. The cast also includes Penelope Ann Miller as First Lady Nancy Reagan and Leslie Ann Down as Margaret Thatcher. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Right, let's go back to Nana.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? Just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Well, joining me today, it's Lizzie Cundy and also Matthew Larza. Still to come, my difficult conversations. Now today, Sacha Bailey, a former model and son of fashion photographer David Bailey. He's talking about abandoning his plans to become a transgender woman and whether gender dysphoria is being over-diagnosed. Then stay tuned for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we give 16-year-olds the right to vote? So Keir Starmer thinks that they should. The Labour leader confirmed his position earlier today on the campaign trail. A tribunal has also found that calling a woman frumpy at work could count as discrimination. So in my mini-debate, I'm asking, has woke culture gone way too far? And of course, we'll test my panel on the knowledge with their quickfire quiz. That is all on the way in this hour. Send me your views, post your comments, visit gbnews.com/your say. So now it's time for this week's difficult conversations. Now, what happens when a young person changes their mind about undergoing a gender transition? Well, my next guest is a 29-year-old man who believed himself to be a transgender woman. Now, he had made plans to transition after a single meeting at a gender clinic in Japan. The former model and son of the famous fashion photographer David Bailey, he said that he's happy to be alive after deciding against gender reassignment. So I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined now in the studio by Sacha Bailey. Sacha Bailey, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's really good to talk to you. So you are the son of legendary David Bailey.
Yes.
But people think your life and world must have been amazing growing up with him as a father. What was that like growing up when you were younger?
It was great. He's a fantastic father, but I do think there were certain parts of manhood that were left out for me. And as we see that kind of in society, that is something that's growing more and more with young men. That they may have father figures, they may have fathers around them, but it wasn't exactly the father who would have taken me fishing or done kind of traditional masculine things. We played chess together, we talked about kind of thoughts and things like that. We watched movies together, but we didn't fill in a lot of the roles of kind of masculinity, and we see that now with kind of a lot of the men coming out who are taking these talking points and are taking kind of salient talking points that young men need to hear, but are using it for their own benefit and are using it to gain things.
But people would say that, you know, someone with such an, you know, obviously you would have had advantages. Your father wouldn't have been short of a few bob. He was, you know, filming famous people, famous models, people like Naomi Campbell. He's got them all. People used to say that I looked a bit like her. OK, it's lies. I appreciate that, but there's people who like me. But people would say that you must have had, like, such a great life growing up. Why would you feel lacking or needing of anything at all?
I think that that's an illusion. That's the people look on something and they always think the grass is greener. They don't quite understand what the reality of living like that is. I mean, as someone who grew up in that position and trying to go into the major workforce, you are scorned at. There is a certain level of bigotry. Famous kids are expected to be complete wrecks or famous. They're not expected to go and do normal things. When you go into kind of white-collar work, you do find often that you have kind of some form of actual discrimination for doing that. So for me, I've always worked towards building my own thing, making sure that I work independently to make sure that I'm not kind of pigeonholed into that. I spent an extensive amount of time in Japan. While I was there, I built one of the biggest art shows, digital art shows. I helped build a movement and pioneer it in Web3, and all of these things are unrelated to my family. But every time I tried to work in like a normal space, it became quite difficult.
Because everyone would say, oh, you're David Bailey's son, or blah, 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 blah.
Exactly. My favourite places to work up until doing things for myself was bar work and doing KP work, because there I was on the same level as everyone else. Everyone treated me the same way, because it didn't matter where I came from, it didn't matter who I was. Everyone was there to achieve the goal and just graft.
So you must almost think, when somebody says, oh, you're the son of David Bailey, and they introduce you the way I did and mentioned it, there's a sort of a bit that goes, oh, God's sake, woman.
As I said, in Tokyo, I was introduced on multiple national news networks as Sasha Bailey, founder and CEO of the BAE and Blockchain Art Exchange. So for me, casting off that shadow has already happened. So right now, being introduced as such, that's fine.
Well, you're probably pretty proud of him anyway, I should imagine.
Of course.
And so what was it? You talked initially about the fact that there weren't many sort of masculine things that you did. Some people might say, well, gender dysphoria is not about masculinity, it's about how you feel inside. What do you think it was that led you to then go from feeling that to then looking to change your gender? Because that's a big leap, isn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I had gender dysphoria, in some sense, dysphoria, I guess, since I was very young, growing up, and it came in bouts. So I think I'm a person who was predisposed to this sort of thing. And then the situation I was in Japan was kind of highly abusive, and towards the end of it, it was almost something that kind of helped me get out of the situation I was in. Not because of the transgenderism, she was actually weirdly fine with that, because I was able to change my way of thinking and get out of a box that I was stuck in. And there's so many people stuck in that kind of abusive mindset, that abusive kind of cage they put themselves in, where they believe that they can't get out of something because of extenuating circumstances, or, for instance, like me, because you need to look after that person and you feel like without them you'd be lost. Without you, they would be lost. And even though they're abusing you, you want to help them. You want to do everything you can for them.
So you found yourself in quite an abusive situation in Japan, and you had those feelings of not being masculine enough.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that was challenged on me all the time.
All the time you were feeling that. So you then thought, well, maybe I should be a woman.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a way of getting out, in a way, maybe subconsciously, it was a way of all of those things that were being thrown at me were suddenly invalid. You know, I didn't have to use the gender-knees line, I didn't have to adhere to heteronormative values anymore. So I was able to suddenly fight back in a lot of ways that I wasn't able to. And then events happened and other circumstances did, and I fled Japan and thankfully came back to England. But it helped me again realise what the situation really was, because it was so untenable that instead of being able to change my environment, I tried to change myself.
I see. How far did you go then with this?
So I was wearing makeup, wearing nails, I was wearing a body-shaping corset underneath my clothes all the time for about 2 or 3 months. So that, I don't know what sort of damage that might have done to me, but you're definitely not supposed to be wearing it as much as I was. But yeah, I was on the edge of kind of telling people what my preferred pronouns would have been. However, even when I was going to transition, I was never super sold on the idea that anyone should have to refer to you as anything they don't want to. But yeah, I came incredibly close.
So, but then why did you not have the surgery?
I didn't have so I was prescribed HRT, and then when I came back to England, I had the time to think about it, and also the slowness of the NHS, ironically, was quite useful.
That's what saved you from all of that.
Yeah, and just time to think about it. And also I met someone who kind of did what a lot of psychiatrists say to do, especially whether someone will end up transitioning or not, which is to mirror them back, to make sure that they understand what they are saying. So for me, it was talking about, OK, well, I want to take this HRT medicine, and then what? And it's like, OK, well, then my fat will redistribute, I'll be more feminine, and I'll start to grow female anatomy, and I'll be infertile. And someone repeated that back to me, just repeated exactly what I said. And then for me, that was kind of a lightning bolt moment. I actually just started laughing.
You started laughing?
Yeah, because I realised kind of the absurdity of what I was actually saying out loud. And again, it's important to say that this was my decision and it was right for me. For other people, what might make them happy or what might be the right decision might be something different. But I do think that my story would definitely speak volumes to anyone under the age of 18 or 19 thinking about doing this is not someone who would be able to understand that sort of stuff.
So do you think, then, that the way people are affirming people's gender pronouns and all of this is dangerous?
I think that there's a mix. It's important that people are kind, because these are people who are going through, for whatever reason, some of the biggest turmoil of their lives. Some of them may be suicidal, as I was before. Some of them may be having some seriously hard times. And kindness always is going to get through to them more. If you run up to people and misgender them, that's not going to get through to someone. So if we're actually talking about saving lives, we're talking about helping people, it's more useful to talk within the framework which they're going to listen you to. And if you can be right and still talk within that framework, that will get through to someone in a really powerful way.
Now you talked about the fact that you said you felt suicidal. Did you attempt to take your life?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
And since then, everything since then's been extra. I came incredibly close. I didn't because it was in a... the house had very few places to put something from, so I was in a bath. Sorry, too much detail.
We don't really talk about the nature of which, but it's more your thinking.
Yeah, my thinking that led me there was because, again, the relationship I was in was so nasty, but I felt obligated to this person because of their personal difficulties. So I felt in that moment that was the only way out for me. And then, you know, the real transitioning stuff started kind of after that. So you could say that me wanting to transition was a way of doing that without doing it.
What do you think, or how do you think we can help young people who feel that they're in the wrong body, as it were? I don't like that phrase, wrong body, because your body is your body. Whatever body you had, it belongs to you. That's the one thing that is yours. Yeah. So how do you think we can help young people? I
would say mirroring them, if they're talking about doing it, is a big part of it. But also, there's a lot of things going on in society which, especially for young boys, are not great. There's no incentives. Before we came on, we briefly mentioned 80s movies. And if you look back at the 80s, there's so many male role models. And they weren't just doing films. They weren't just being action heroes. You know, Mr. T did all of those kind of after-school specials. And these kind of older men who could be role models were going around doing stuff, and they were allowed to be men, and they were celebrated for it. Whereas now, we have this problem where we're pushing... anyone with that sort of pro-men's view is being pushed away to the point where we end up with people like Andrew Tate taking control of the conversation.
Yeah. And when you're there, then, you know, he sounds like he's making a lot of sense, but he makes sense in what he's saying, but his solutions don't make any sense at all.
Well, the solutions is give me money.
Exactly.
I don't think you're going to get much from giving a man... You're not going to get rich giving a man money. That's how he makes his money. Yeah.
He's gone quite quiet now. I think he's been still under arrest or whatever has happened to him. So what are you up to now? Because I know you're a CEO and you've been doing lots of things.
Well, I'm actually working on a book about the subjects and about kind of my thoughts on this whole kind of topic. So now that's kind of the next stage for me, is writing a book.
When do you hope to have that ready so people can...
Well, I would hope... I don't want to say for sure, it takes a long time, but I would hope within the next 8 months to a year. But we'll see what the publisher thinks. That might be too soon.
Well, listen, it'll be... I know for sure that it'll be a fascinating read, Sasha. It's really good to talk to you, and thank you so much for coming in. A lot of people will be listening to what you've said, and I hope that that's helped quite a few people.
I hope so too.
Sasha Bailey, thank you very much. Incredible. And, of course, that was difficult conversations. And if you've been affected by any topics discussed, you can find help through the Samaritans on 116 123. That's 116 123. And also through their website, samaritans.org. Well, if you just joined me, it's just coming up to 19 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, my mini debate. After an employment tribunal found calling a woman frumpy was discrimination, I'll be asking, has woke culture gone too far? But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote?
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
If she has such ambitions, where does this leave Prince Harry? I mean, he's obviously already resentful that he was treated as a spare back here in Britain. But he would only then become even more of a spare if he were married to either the president or somebody who was clearly setting her sights that way and taking various offices.
Yes, clearly this presents a problem for Harry, because if you notice what their plans are, and there's Meghan's lifestyle blog, American Riviera or Orchard, an odd name, really rather ponderous. I think her PRs could have thought up something better. And then this Netflix program on cookery and entertainment and so forth. Harry is doing a series on polo, which is a bit of an elitist sport, actually. But of course, Harry has got Invictus. And so they have to, as they plan, Harry must, it must be absolutely definite that Harry will be integral to the planning. I mean, remember, he is very emotionally reliant on her and therefore might be content in this context to be a spare, even if many people would laugh. But I certainly see, remember, you have to begin by hard campaigning. They're only putting in a each for other charity artwork. If they really do want Meghan to go into politics, if that is her ambition, then I think she should make absolutely sure she's got the ground rules of how you do this in America. They've got to have a look at also whether they would wish to have their, or keep their titles in, even though they're in abeyance. This too is a problem. I mean, if you're really looking at a serious political career, I don't see it starting from what we know now.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 22 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube. But it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote? Now, Sir Keir Starmer, today, he confirmed his plans to lower the voting age to include 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, here is the argument that he set out earlier, speaking to reporters on the campaign trail in the West Midlands.
I want to see 16 and 17-year-olds voting. They can go out and work. They can serve in our armed forces. And, of course, if they are out and working, they pay tax. And therefore, they should have a say over how the money they're paying in is being used. So, yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
Well, he potentially would say that, wouldn't he? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote? Well, I'm joined now by political commentator Stephen Carlton-Woods, former member of the Youth Parliament Zara Khan, political commentator Alex Petropoulos, and political commentator Anna McGovern. Well, I'm going to start with you. Anna McGovern, do you think that 16, 17-year-olds should be given the right to vote?
I don't believe so, because 16 and 17-year-olds, they are children, and I don't think that we should be letting children be involved in actually voting in the general election. I think as well, what I do believe is we should absolutely be bringing political education into schools, educate young people in the voting systems, in getting engaged into politics, but young people, they still have to be in education up until the age of 18. And I think actually involving them in the general election, I think is too soon. Leave it at 18 when they are adults and are politically informed to do that.
Why do you think, Alex, he is doing this then? Because surely, as Anna says, young people don't really... at 16, 17, I didn't have a clue what was going on, to be honest. Even now, I'm struggling to work out what these parties are doing. But, Alex, what do you think? Do you think that this is the right thing to be doing?
I do think this is the right thing to be doing. And I'm not necessarily going to push back on the fact that when people are 16 and 17, they know less. I think the first way and the best way to get people involved in the political system, to get people engaged, is to actually give them something to do with it. Give them a vote. If you give people a vote, they will suddenly say, wow, I've got this amazing privilege. Now I'm going to actually do research and figure out what to do with it. And I think the argument that young voters are uninformed doesn't really go that far, because, to be honest, voters across the age groups across the UK don't engage with politics that much at all. And so we don't take away their votes because they don't research enough about the Labour Party manifesto. They haven't watched enough news this year. We still give them a vote. And if you're going to engage with our society, you should be able to have a say in it.
Well, yeah, but what do you know? Let's be honest, by that age, you've probably not had any children, not that you would have at 18, but you've never really, most young people at that age, the majority, haven't been paying bills, so they don't really understand the real currency of currency, because when you're doing that, like my daughter, she's 15, I would hate to see her having the power to vote at the age of 16. I go off and buy her stuff, and she just expects me to just carry on providing more and more. She doesn't get it. So what do you think, Stephen? Am I on the wrong track here?
No, well, I'm a little bit older than the rest of the guests here.
How old are you? How old are you, Stephen? How old are you?
How old am I? I'm coming up to 60 in October.
Oh, you're looking good on it. You're looking good. All right, carry on. You are the oldest.
So
yes.
I do remember when I was a youngster, and I was all for youngsters having a vote. But I've been involved in politics for a long time now, and I've seen young people engaging in politics, and also we take on students at a radio station that I'm involved with as well. So I've seen a lot come through the system over the years. So I agree with some of the comments I've heard. And I do think we should be engaging young people in politics, but I don't think it's right to have them voting at 16. The law was changed last year for marriage, so you can't get married before 18 now. So there's a reason behind that. And I would even go as far to say that they should put the voting age back to 21.
Yeah, you see, do you think, Stephen, that perhaps he should, if he wants to do something like that, which some could argue, he's actually almost sort of, well, in a way, half interfering with the vote, because at the end of the day, we know that a lot of young people are more likely to be left-leaning. Do you think something like that should be via referendum if he really wants to do something like that?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think you should change anything now. The people being given the vote, I don't think you should take it away from them. And I think, really, it's wise to leave it as it is. We've had a study done, actually, in recent months about this, and it came across quite strongly, really. The appetite and for the country was to leave it as it is, don't mess with something that's not broken.
Zara Khan, you're a former member of the Youth Parliament, so you'll probably be very up on this. What do you think, Zara?
I think that politicians just need to be brave, be bold, take the decision to lower the voting age to 16. The best time is to do it now so that we can move forward as a society. When I debated this topic in the House of Commons with other youth MPs, I saw that it's really essential to lower the voting age because we were already deeply involved in society. If we can work part-time jobs, if we can pay taxes, if we can serve in the army, then why can't we have a say in what happens in our future? We need to have a voice in electing the leaders who can make decisions that impact our future. And when I was a youth MP at the age of 16, I met with my local MP, and I saw that he took the time to meet with me, to listen to my ideas. So it showed that if politicians can take the time to engage with young people and the community, then this is a step forward in showing that young people young people's voices should be heard.
Yeah, but Zara, you're the exception rather than the rule, let's be honest here, because most young people aren't as informed as you. But not only that, I worry that they'll use TikTok or other social medias to manipulate the vote, and there'll be so many of them as well. That, to me, Anna McGovern, sounds more like it, because my daughter, at a 15, almost 16-year-old, will be doing just that, doing these TikTok dances, this, that and the other, and then, you know, telling all her friends, and then they all doing it. What do you think, Anna? Am I wrong?
No, you're not. And I was also a member of UK Youth Parliament formerly when I was 17. So I was probably the exception to other young people my age where I was politically active and getting involved, trying to learn about the political systems around me. But I was very different when I was 16 and 17 to what I am now. Like, for example, I supported the Liberal Democrats when I was that age, and I definitely say I do not have the same values as I did when I was that age. I think for young people, there are so many ways that you can get involved and get your voice heard, and ways that you can influence policies. For example, like the UK Youth Parliament, I thought was a fantastic way to get young people's voices heard. However, most young people aren't involved in politics. They don't understand the political systems around them. That is partly because it is not educated, like young people are not educated about this in schools, which I think is important, get young people involved. But I think leave it to adults. At 18, you are an adult and you should have the right to vote by then. But I think giving children the right to vote, I think that it's too soon.
All right, well, listen, I will leave it there, Anna McGovern, thank you very much. But what I'm going to say is I'm going to ask you all then, a yes or no then. I'm going to start with you, Anna McGovern. Should young people then be given the right to vote? Yes or no, 16 or not?
At 18, you should be given the right to vote, but not 16 or 17.
Stephen Carlton-Woods?
No.
No. Alex Petropoulos?
Yes, they've done it in Greece, they've done it in other countries, and those countries are operating fine. They're electing centre-right governments as well. So it's not like it's a Labour ploy.
And Zara Khan, yes or no? Yes or no?
Absolutely, yes. Scotland and Wales have lowered the voting age.
Just yes or no? Just yes or no? They cheated. I did pull them all up on it, so I have to do it with you as well, Zara. Thank you very much, Zara Khan. Also, Anna McGovern, Alex Petropoulos, and also Stephen Carlton-Woods. Thank you for your thoughts. So what do you think at home as you listen to that? Do you think that young people should be given the vote from 16 to 17? I think if a politician is making such a change to the voting structure, I would actually say that's something that should be a referendum for the public to decide whether, in fact, he should even be doing that. But what do you think? GB News at gbnews.com/your say. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online, and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Labour advisor Matthew Larser, also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. But first, let's get your latest news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Nana. 5:31. An RAF aircraft believed to be a Spitfire has crashed in Lincolnshire. The single-occupant plane crashed into a field near RAF Coningsby. No one else was believed to be involved. Police and emergency services rushed to the scene just before 1:20 this afternoon. It's thought that the aircraft was taking part in a Battle of Britain memorial event. Sir Keir Starmer says the voting age should be lowered to 16. Speaking to reporters, the Labour leader said if you can work and pay tax, then you ought to be able to vote. It comes as both major parties pitch their messages to voters on the first weekend of the election campaign, with the government focusing on the economy. Well, meanwhile, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is ready to see a new parliament. He was speaking after the number of Tory MPs stepping down reached 78. That's a new post-war record. It also surpasses the previous high prior to Tony Blair's victory in 1997. And congestion in Dover has thankfully eased slightly, though drivers are still facing waits of up to 90 minutes. An estimated 20 million cars have hit the roads for the bank holiday weekend. The port there saying that there are also delays at the French border, and they're working closely with authorities across the channel to clear those queues. For all the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Coming up in my mini debate, after an employment tribunal found calling a woman frumpy was discrimination, I'm asking, has woke culture gone too far? But next, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote?
is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change. You've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should 16-year-olds and above be given the right to vote? That 16 and 17-year-olds. Sir Keir Starmer confirmed today that he plans to lower the voting age to include 16 and 17-year-olds. Here is his argument. This is what he set out earlier to reporters on the campaign trail in the West Midlands.
Want to see 16 and 17-year-olds voting. They can go out and work. They can serve in our armed forces. And, of course, if they are out and working, they pay tax. And, therefore, they should have a say over how the money they're paying in is being used. So, yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds. If you can work, you can pay tax, if you can serve in your armed forces, then you ought to be able to vote.
I wonder if that means that if you don't work and you don't pay tax, you shouldn't be allowed to vote, if we follow that logic through. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should 16-year-olds be given the right to vote? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. The other way around, but it's fine.
Oh.
I did what
you know, I was going to say I went first for a change.
You know, you thought, oh my God, I have hair.
Yes, I did. Later.
Right. Matthew Laza, let's start with you, because you are a Labour man. As
I am.
And you're a great leader that's suggesting that...
Yeah, well, it's actually been a Labour policy for a while. It was a Labour policy all the way back in 2015 as well. And I think it's a very, very good idea. And because what the evidence shows from where it's been done, and this is absolutely crucial, is it gives young people the voting habit. We don't mind who they vote for, but as they go out, but we all want people to be involved in their democracy. So all the evidence shows that if you give people votes at 16, they get the voting habit. In the Scottish referendum, 75% of this, when people were given votes at 16, people between 16 and 18, 75% of them voted. But the next group, the 18 to 24-year-olds, 54% voted. And a lot of this is because they're still living at home, they go with their parents.
Because they know that younger people are more likely to be left-wing.
Well, they wouldn't. I mean, I remember. I'm old enough to remember during the Iraq War, when young people began to hate the Labour Party and all flocked to the Lib Dems.
That was then. This is now.
No, but it's actually the right thing to do. And look at the list of countries that have done it. Austria's done it. Brazil's done it. And then closer to home, the Isle of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey have done it.
Yeah, but that should be done, I think, via referendum. Lizzie
I am shocked and horrified that 16-year-olds could be given the vote. I totally am. And Matthew, this is why people are in the political wilderness, because we have to listen to this clown saying things that I think, I will call him that, because this is another, look at me, the progressive thinking party. Actually, what 16-year-old has life, skills and know how he should vote or she should vote? I just think they
But they suddenly get it at 18?
They haven't got the whole of their life skills, experience. Really. They haven't got it, Matthew. And if you I'm sorry, most 16-year-olds I know wouldn't want this vote, wouldn't want that responsibility. What are their mums going to... their mums will have to drive them to the ballot box and, pack them a packed lunch on the way. It doesn't make sense.
It does make sense, Lizzie, because it gives...
he knows the younger... Because the younger will vote.
Because it gives people the habit, and that's the crucial thing. 97% of those who voted who were between 16 and 17 in Scotland have said that they would vote again. So it's all about giving young people the vote. And yes, we ask people to die for our country. We ask people to pay taxes. No taxation without representation, as the American Revolution said.
Well, how about in some... I think it's Australia where you have to vote.
Yes, so I'm in favour of that.
Perhaps instead of doing that, it should be almost law that you have to vote. Even if you spoil your ballot, you should have to vote.
I'm half Australian. I've got an Australian passport, and I
think that's the way forward. But here, this sounds like somebody manipulating a voting system because they know there's...
No, but the Tories have...
No,
they've got form on that.
Sorry. Let me finish. It does sound as though this is somebody who is... If most people were more likely to be right-wing when they were younger, I don't think Sir Keir Starmer will be that impressed. Why doesn't he call a referendum something like that? That is a complete
It's a good question. Because on this level of change in the electoral system, the Tories introduced photo ID, which nobody called for. Even Tories like Jacob Rees-Mogg don't believe. They changed the voting system for every mayoral election that we've just had in May.
But that's not the same.
It is absolutely, and it's happened.
And
it's happened in Scotland and Wales for local elections and for the Scottish and Welsh parliaments, and that hasn't happened. Well, I think if you're in Scotland and Wales, the Parliament...
habit with local elections.
Matthew, you know that this isn't right. You know he's doing this just because...
You're only opposing it because you'll damage the right.
He thinks that the younger generation are more likely to vote Labour because they're mainly woke brigade and they will vote for him. That is the reasoning why he's doing this. Do you know it?
No, it's about making a better society.
And they haven't got the life skills to vote. I'd be horrified if I'm thinking 6-year-olds are voting because they haven't... Your full frontal cortex of your brain isn't fully developed.
Well, then we shouldn't ask them to pay taxes. Do you want to raise the voting age to 25?
Well, should we go and let them all buy alcohol as well, shall we?
No. What we are saying is you can work... The key thing is, at 16...
We all know why he's doing this.
At 16, you can be... And we all know why people are opposing it, because the people on the right of politics oppose it because they're worried it would impact the left. I'm in favour of it because it's the right thing to do to get young people into the voting habit. I trust our young people.
Adult responsibilities on 16-year-olds' shoulders.
They could do local elections, as you said, like you said. But hang on. But I don't think they should be in a general election, only simply because they are not equipped with the skills to do that. I have a 15-year-old who's almost 16. They will manipulate the system with TikTok and all the other stuff. And before you know it, they'll be...
Isn't that the same for 18-year-olds as well?
They haven't worked. They've gone into
but they can work full-time.
Well, let's see...
Mainly, they haven't. They haven't got life skills.
Well, listen, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices there. Opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. There are two of you. I'm going to start with David Barr. Oh, no, I'm going to start with Brian Dugan in Solihull. Brian.
Hi, Nana. How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah, I found it interesting there, the discussion where someone can have the life experience to vote when they're 18, but they don't have that life experience when they're 17. Amazing what these 17-year-olds must do then to gain that life experience by the time they're 18.
Well, let's
Just
start with
absurd, the
16.
argument.
Well, no, I don't think it is. Because there's a whole world away from being 15 to 16 to 16 to 17. Things happen at different ages. What about 16 then? 16 is too young. Have you got children, Brian?
But sorry. 16 and 17, I thought, was the debate.
Yeah,
you can't say that 17-year-olds lack the life experience.
I didn't say. I do believe they do.
Do. Well, sorry, somebody said it.
You have to put a line somewhere, but I don't think the line should be so low.
Nana. Exactly, Nana. And if you let me state what I'd like to state, I think the line is fine at 16 years old. And for the reason that you're saying that it's not logical, it's absolutely logical in terms of if someone is able to work, if someone is able to pay tax, if someone is able to be in the armed forces, how on earth can you say that they're unable to vote?
Well, listen, you can change gender at, 13 and 14. There's no, come on, let's be honest, you can change sex when you're younger. So that's illogical.
It's the best thing I've ever heard. In the whole year so far, that you can have life experience at 18-year-old, but you have no life experience at 17.
Nobody said none, but I would say that as you live, you grow in your knowledge and you get to be able to do more things. And by that age, you should have done more and you probably have a better handle on it. Let me go to David Barr. Let me ask David Barr.
And at 16, if you can
That's
work,
irrelevant. Some people don't work.
You've got a lot of life experience.
Some people don't work and don't pay taxes and they also vote. David Barr.
Hello, Nana. Great topic. I'm 66, so in the 1970s at my school, we had mock elections. I think it was the Wilson Heath election. So we learnt about the political thing. So if you want 16 to 17-year-olds to vote, make politics part of their school, their education. Don't suddenly say to a 16-year-old, oh, by the way, you're voting in the next election. Because all they're going to look at is yourselves on TikTok. But the other thing that Keir Starmer keeps going about people working, as far as I know, children can't leave school at 16 and go and get a job. They have to stay in full-time education to 18. So the argument that he's put forward is rubbish. Yes, they can go to the
I think children have to stay in full-time education until you can leave after yours.
You can't go on benefits.
You can't go on benefits at 16, but you can leave.
I apologise. Make it political studies as part of your education, so you have an understanding of what goes on in Parliament.
Well,
yes, vote to the local elections to get them into the habit of voting, but not to the general election.
Yeah, I think local elections maybe, but not general. That's what my thoughts are. Brian Dugan, thank you very much for your spirited discussion, and also David Baum. Thank you. Really good to talk to you. Those are my great British voices. Right, coming up, my quickfire quiz. I'm going to test the panel on some of the stories that caught their eye this week. Next, though, I'm in a debate after employment tribunals found calling a woman frumpy was discrimination. Has woke culture gone too far? This is GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. Over the next 24 hours, it's all change as areas of rain move in from the Atlantic, some heavy showers developing as well. And that's all thanks to low pressure, which is going to dominate through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers, and we can see that rain already pushing into some western areas. Today's rain still lingering across eastern parts of England, pushing its way northwards. Some heavy bursts possible into the early hours, as we can see. Most areas cloudy, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards. But this will keep temperatures up for most, staying in double figures, turning breezy around the coast and over the hills as well. So it means a bit of a grey start to Sunday morning. Some glimmers of sunshine perhaps first thing across southwest England. But let's take a look at the details for Sunday morning. We can see a dry start across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 spells of sunshine, but rain across the central belt, southern parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland, some of this heavy at times too. Temperatures on the mild side to start the day. We can see cloudy across the rest of England and Wales too. Outbreaks of rain in places, but some sunshine developing from the southwest, and these brighter skies will slowly push northwards as we move through the day on Sunday, with the rain becoming more confined to the northern half of the UK. Further south, though, we will see some heavy thundery showers develop, particularly across parts of England and Wales. These could lead to some local disruption, some hail, some localised flooding as well. Temperatures a little lower compared to Saturday, generally the mid to high teens, locally up to around about 21 degrees across southeast England. Into the evening time, thunderstorms will slowly fade away. We'll still see further spells of rain across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England as we head into the early hours. And then the next few days, it does remain unsettled. Further showers on Monday, further spells of rain Tuesday and into Wednesday.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, only 11 minutes to go. Oh, have you been? What have you been doing if you've just tuned in? Why? Don't leave it so late tomorrow. We start at 3. But moving on, another story that caught my eye today, as a tribunal found that calling a woman frumpy at work could count as discrimination. As a result of this decision, the woman who could now sue co-workers under the equalities law, with the comment being inherently linked to gender and has the potential to violate the dignity of female colleagues. Do you think that woke culture has gone too far? Joining me to discuss, Lizzie Cundy and Matthew Larser. Lizzie Cundy.
Oh, the woke brigade have gone mad. This is just crazy. Am I allowed to say that word? And actually, someone on the way in said, "There's a frumpy dress for you you're wearing today." Did I take offence?
No.
No.
They're currently in A&E.
This is actually
waiting for 20 hours.
Yes. No, but this is a real slippery slope we're on. You know, we've got to really be careful every word we say. I'm really worried about this, and just because you're offended doesn't make you right.
Exactly.
Look, I agree that just because you're offended doesn't make you right, and it also doesn't mean that somebody is being offensive just because you're offended. But I think that frumpy is you wouldn't hear people saying that about a man in quite the same way. So I think it's on the edge, that one. I mean, some people call it woke. I call it, fairness in the workplace.
It's not.
But it needs to be common sense at all times.
Frumpy is a way, if you're dressed in a frumpy way, it's like having potatoes and eating, really solid food. Being frumpy is that sort of thing. It's that
I think it depends on if somebody used it to bully somebody, that's different. But if it was just I don't know the details in this case.
As a bullying thing, I don't think that would work very well. You'd be laughed at.
You'd expect a bit harder for that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, frumpy.
I've been called a lot worse.
Yeah, me too.
You've called me a lot worse, Lizzie.
Well, it's time for the quickfire quiz, the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories that caught their eye. Matthew Larser, your buzzer, please. And Lizzie Cundy, your buzzer, please. Right, please play along at home. Question 1. Drew Ream's song, Things Can Only Get Better, drowned out Rishi Sunak's election announcement this week. But where did the song originally peak in the US charts in 1993? The UK charts, sorry. Was it A3, B12 or C24? Matthew Larser, push your buzzer.
I think it was A3.
A3, Lizzie Cundy.
B12.
B12. Let's see the answer is 24. You're both completely wrong.
Crikey. It's done better than that. It's now number 6 in the iTunes and rising.
Things can only get wetter.
Very good. Closest answer wins. Veteran Labour MP Harriet Harman spoke in the Commons for the final time yesterday. But how many times did she say she had spoken in the chamber? Matthew Larser.
1,240.
1,042.
It'll be way more than that, actually. Can I change my answer?
No, 9,000.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Who's the winner?
Me.
Lizzie Cundy, there you go. Right, question 3. Who won the FA Cup? Lizzie Cundy.
Man United.
Was it? So she's correct.
It was.
Evan Holmes will be very happy.
The score? You're just going to
I was doing the news, darling.
I don't know. I just saw that. Apparently it was a tactical victory for Van Haag or whatever he's called before they get rid of him.
2-0.
Well, let's see. The score was 2-1. Yes, sorry, spoiler alert. Yes, the answer is Manchester United. Right, question 4. Before his potential career, Communities Minister Michael Gove starred as a school chaplain in the 1994 family comedy A Feast at Midnight. Lizzie Cundy.
She was in the middle of the question.
We're running out of time. Lizzie. Yes.
I think it's true as well.
Matthew Laza.
True.
What if she's wrong?
I'll just say false for the sake of it.
It's true.
I'm giving up today.
It is true. The answer, what's the score? 2-1.
It could be very interesting who's going to
No,
get
it's
his...
2-0, actually.
I wonder who will
That
get
doesn't
his
make sense. Right, finally, NatWest have released the results of a new survey about kids and their pocket money. But which chore came out on top as paying the best? A, cleaning the car, B, mowing the lawn, or C, cleaning the windows? Matthew Laza.
A, cleaning the car.
It is cleaning the car, but I'll say cleaning the windows.
The windows. My kids climbing up on the windows, cracking up.
Oh, mowing the lawn.
Totally wrong. It was mowing the lawn.
Pretty disastrous this week, isn't it?
Oh, well, that
really
was...
bad.
I think I'm winning, though.
You've won, but on a very low score.
Winner of the quiz. I can't imagine my kids wanting to mow the lawn.
No, I wouldn't trust them to do it.
I think my daughter would mow it.
Have you not got a robot mower?
Don't be silly. My lawn's so small, I have a gardener. Right, well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, should 16-year-olds have the vote? And according to our Twitter poll, 9% of you say yes, 91% of you say no. Absolutely correct. I also asked, was Rishi Sunak right to call an election now? And according to my Twitter poll, 45% of you say yes, 55% of you say no. Interesting. Thank you for all your thoughts. Thank you so much to my panel, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza.
Thank you.
And also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. And also a huge thank you to you for joining me at home. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time, same place, 3 o'clock. Be there, be square. Next up, it's time for the Saturday 5. I'll leave you with the weather. Have a good day.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. Over the next 24 hours, it's all changes. Areas of rain move in from the Atlantic, some heavy showers developing as well. And that's all thanks to low pressure, which is going to dominate through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers. And we can see that rain already pushing into some western areas. Today's rain still lingering across eastern parts of England, pushing its way northwards. Some heavy bursts possible into the early hours, as we can see. Most areas cloudy, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards. But this will keep temperatures up, for most staying in double figures, turning breezy around the coast and over the hills as well. So it means a bit of a grey start to Sunday morning. Some glimmers of sunshine perhaps first thing across southwest England. But let's take a look at the details for Sunday morning. We can see a dry start across northern Scotland, 1 or 2 spells of sunshine, but rain across the central belt, southern parts of Scotland into Northern Ireland. Some of this heavy at times too. Temperatures on the mild side to start the day. We can see cloudy across the rest of England and Wales too. Outbreaks of rain in places, but some sunshine developing from the southwest. And these brighter skies will slowly push northwards as we move through the day on Sunday, with the rain becoming more confined to the northern half of the UK. Further south, though, we will see some heavy, thundery showers develop, particularly across parts of England